ini merupakan sesi bengkel. Jadi saya berharap sangat-sangatlah ada banyak interaksi di antara saya dengan tuan-tuan dan perempuan dalam kita membawa penyelidikan di Malaysia ke peringkat yang lebih tinggi lah. Jadi daripada segi perancangan saya pada pagi ini, let me see whether akan dia tak mau bergerak skrin dia. Let me look. Okey, cadangan saya pada pagi ini untuk bengkel kita selama lebih kurang 3 jam masa agak panjang tapi saya masakan kalau sekiranya kita ada banyak sesi interaksi di antara saya dengan tuan-tuan dan perempuan masa 3 jam tu akan jadi singkat dan saya berharap sangat-sangatlah saya boleh belajar daripada tuan-tuan dan perempuan daripada segi idea nak memasukkan permohonan baru untuk tahun 2021 bagi permohonan Geran FRGS dan juga PRGS lah. Untuk sesi pertama pagi ini kalau sekiranya diimbas semula apa yang telah saya terangkan pada bulan 12 yang lalu, penghujung bulan Disember saya telah menerangkan permohonan berdasarkan polisi dokumen yang diguna pakai berdasarkan kepada wawasan 2020 dan seperti tuan-tuan perempuan sedia maklum melalui 2021 ni ada banyak polisi baru yang diperkenalkan di antara polisi tersebut ialah wawasan kemakmuran bersama 2020 sehingga 2030 dan saya akan masuklah komponen polisi yang terdapat di bawah WKB 2030 dalam menerangkan keperluan kita untuk memenuhi dokumen polisi yang perlu diisi dalam sistem migran. Dan kalau sekiranya kita lihat pada 9 Disember 2020 Kementerian Sains, Teknologi dan Inovasi juga memperkenalkan satu lagi dokumen polisi yang berkaitan tentang sains, teknologi dan inovasi. Dan dasar ini dikenali sebagai Dasar Sains, Teknologi, Inovasi Negara di STIN yang dilancarkan melalui 9 bulan November dan itu juga perlu kita faham dan maklumat yang terkandung dalam di STIN 2030 bermula daripada 2021 sehingga 2030 perlu juga kita masukkan dalam permohonan geran dana fundamental di KPT selain daripada itu juga kalau sekiranya kita rujuk dokumen di STIN di peringkat MOSTI ada kerangka 1010 My STIE yang menerangkan bagaimana pendekatan R&D yang akan dilaksanakan mulai tahun 2021 bagi tujuan melonjakkan teknologi yang terdapat dalam negara supaya dia dapat diperkembangkan dan selanjutnya bila ditingkatkan lagi daripada segi nilai R&D yang dilakukan dalam negara, dia berupaya untuk menyumbang pendapatan ekonomi negara dan perlu juga kita rujuk 1010 My STIE yang dihasilkan oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia di dalam permohonan yang kita akan buat di bawah kita 2021 sehinggalah 2030. Selain daripada itu juga satu lagi rujukan polisi yang perlu kita buat adalah SDG Sustainable Development Goal yang diterima pakai oleh kerajaan Malaysia. Kalau sekiranya kita lihat di peringkat United Nations ada 17 SDG yang diutarakan, tapi untuk Malaysia kita ada 18 tambahan satu lagi SDG dan kalau boleh rujuk kepada 17 SDG yang telah dikeluarkan dengan tambahan satu lagi SDG yang bertajuk Societal Harmony and Happiness bertujuan untuk mengukuhkan hubungan antara kaum di Malaysia. Jadi untuk peringkat permulaan ni saya akan terangkan pencarian maklumat latar belakang tentang WKB 2030, di STIN 2021 sehingga 2030. Ada juga kerangka 1010 My STIE yang dikeluarkan oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia, dan satu lagi policy document yang 18 SDG, ya, Sustainable Development Goal, yang terpakai untuk Malaysia lah. So itu syarat-syarat yang saya akan terangkan lebih lanjut lah dalam peringkat pertama bengkel kita pada pagi ini, ya. Alright. Dia tak mau gerak. Dr. Nojan boleh bantu saya daripada segi kontrol skrin saya dah? Dr. Nojan, saya rasa saya tak boleh nak gerakkan slide saya lah.
Boleh Datuk, nanti kita minta Dr. Nojan sekejap Datuk untuk bantu Datuk.
Okey.
Datuk, cuma permintaan daripada kita punya participant pagi ni Datuk, kalau boleh Datuk share juga lah dalam dua language Datuk, sebab because of kita ada juga daripada US yang international punya lecturers.
Okay.
Okay, thank you Datuk.
Right, thank you very much for that particular information, Prof. Tajul. So, just to recap back on the first part of my presentation this morning, I'll be touching on the new policy document that has been introduced by the government of Malaysia. The first new document that we should be referring to is called Shared Prosperity Vision, SPV, which was launched in 2020, and this will be implemented all the way until 2030. Yeah. The second policy document that every submission should be referring to would be the new policy known as Policy on Science, Technology and Innovation for Malaysia, which was launched by the Honourable Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation on the 9th of December 2020. And part of the policy being introduced by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation is another associated policy document known as 1010 Malaysia Science, Technology, Innovation Economic Framework, which will be implemented from 2021 all the way to 2030. And there is also another essential policy document known as the 18 Sustainable Development Goal, 18 SDG, which is similar to the United Nations 17 SDG, with the exception that in Malaysia, we have introduced one additional element, which is known as societal happiness and harmony. So that will be, in summary, the first part of my presentation. We will be looking at the first part. Dr. Nojan, can you take me to the next slide, please, Dr. Nojan? Okay, so this is just to highlight to you the first part, which is actually the new policy document that we have to refer to in submitting our proposal under FRGS. Next, Dr. Nojan. So basically, in the first part, I will be explaining to you the rationale of the various funding mechanism by the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically this gives an overview of the objective and the introduction for the various funding under the Ministry of Higher Education. There is right now 4 funding mechanisms being offered. The Fundamental Research Grant Scheme in Melayu, Scheme Grant Penyelidikan Fundamental. There is also the next level of funding mechanism, which is known as Prototype Research Funding Scheme. There is can we mute the mic on the participant side? Okay, now the first two funding mechanism, fundamental as well as prototype, operates on the basis that the submission has to be on a single discipline basis, meaning if someone is from engineering, then there is opportunity for the researcher and the engineering to apply a single discipline research project, and this single discipline funding
Datuk, sorry
mechanism.
for interrupting. Okay. For participants who on their mic, please off. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
all right. So coming back for the first two funding mechanism, FRGS as well as PRGS, the funding operate on a single discipline approach, meaning if someone is from physics, then they can submit under the identified single discipline domain, and the processing will be done by expert under the physics discipline. Whereas the other two mechanisms, transdisciplinary as well as long-term research grant scheme, the application is open for researcher, and there is a need for researcher to come up with a team, and the team has to be on a multidisciplinary approach. So basically the difference between FP with T and L would be in the sense that whatever research problem that needs to be done, it has to be on a single discipline or a multidisciplinary approach. And now the other important aspect that we need to be uh, that we should be looking at is the output expected from the four funding mechanism operated by Ministry of Higher Education. The first output that we have to remember would be the talent. Now for institution of higher learning, the quantification for talent would be in the form of either MSc or a PhD, and this output for talent has to be dependent on the time frame for the research funding. If the research project is for a 2 years duration, then the output expected from a 2 years project would be in the form of a master student. And if the funding request is for a duration of 3 years, then the expected talent output would be in the form of a PhD student. The second output required for the various funding under Ministry of Higher Education would be publication, high impact publication, and the minimum requirement for FRGS as well as PRGS would be a minimum of 2 publication, and there is a new guideline being produced for this year. The two output expected from fundamental as well as prototype research grant scheme would be at least one of the publications should be in high impact journal categorized under WOS or Web of Science, and the second publication for certain discipline has to be either in Scopus, and for other selected identified discipline, the second output can be from Scopus, MySite, or ERA listed journal. Now, the impact expected from the various project being done by researcher at private as well as public university, one of those things being identified would be based on the talent being generated through the research funding. The talent would be able to have the skill of conducting the research. To the society, the ministry expect that if there is solution coming out from the research project, then this should be able to resolve some of the current problem facing in the Malaysian community. And eventually, if you talk about the final impact from the various funding mechanism being provided by Ministry of Higher Education would be the outcome should provide some additional income to the country, and that's why we see one of the emphasis being put in by the government of Malaysia is anything that we do in research for the country, it should eventually be able to come up with new policy. It should be able to bring in additional income, and eventually this will lead to the prosperity of the country. So basically that would be the overall objective for the various funding mechanism under KPT. Dr. Nojan, next slide please. Now, next slide please, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically the way it is being done is whatever research would be something that is applicable to Malaysia. Now we understand that if you talk about research being done, it is not something which is advanced as compared to other advanced economy. But nevertheless, what we do, we are hoping that through the research funding provided by the government of Malaysia, it should be able to show the competitiveness of the local university, especially in the global ranking of university throughout the world. The output in the form of high impact journal will eventually shows the expertise available in the country. The output in the form of talent would be able to provide highly skilled workers for the country, and the other aspect that is being given emphasis in terms of the research funding would be, if you look at the whole process of bringing research funding to the marketplace, at least the fundamental scheme being provided by Ministry of Higher Education would be able to generate new knowledge, and eventually this can be brought up in the value chain so that eventually this can be commercialized and contribute towards the income generation in the country. So essentially, this would be the four important output that needs to be emphasized in the application for the research funding under KPT. Yeah? Next, Dr. Nojan, please. Okay, so basically, I will just be switching to Malay now. So basically, if we talk about the way it is being managed at Ministry of Higher Education, whenever there is a new application to be submitted under the online system, there is an online system provided by Ministry of Higher Education, and the system is known as Malaysian Greater Research Network System, or in short, MyGran. So everything is online. And in addition to the online system, there is also guideline being set up by Ministry of Higher Education, and the guideline has to be referred to in terms of what can be requested under the grant, and there is also the aspect of how the project will be managed if the proposal is successful in terms of funding, or being given funding by the ministry. So eventually, if you talk about the funding mechanism by Ministry of Higher Education, it is now being done online. So it is actually a paperless mechanism in terms of application. And there is also a reference guide in terms of what can be applied under the various funding mechanism provided by the Ministry of Higher Education. The other important aspect associated with the funding mechanism being provided by Ministry of Higher Education is once the project has been approved, there is also the monitoring being done by Ministry of Higher Education. And the way it is actually being monitored would be there is a need for research management organization in respective public university as well as private university to submit progress report on 6 monthly basis, and the ministry at the other end would be carrying out monitoring at least once a year just to see the progress of approved project under the various funding mechanism at Ministry of Higher Education. So basically, what I've shown here on this particular slide would be the 6th guideline being developed by Ministry of Higher Education in making sure that the implementation of the project goes according to financial procedure being operated in the country, and at the same time, if there is any issue in terms of project implementation, then the various research management organization or research management center at the respective institution would be able to refer to, and should there be any question, they would then be the Secretariat at Ministry of Higher Education to be referred to in terms of getting further advice. So basically, if you talk about the funding mechanism, there is the application side. Once the proposal has been approved, there would then be the monitoring coming in, and at the end of the funding mechanism, if the project is completed, the output would then be collected by Ministry of Higher Education so that the eventual or the final report can then be passed on to the central agency in terms of the success story for the various funding mechanism under Ministry of Higher Education. Next, Dr. Nojan. Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically, this explains the whole process being developed by Ministry of Higher Education. There is this whole process of managing the research funding, and this will be starting from the point of announcing the opening of the various funding mechanism at the beginning of the year, and it will then be submitted online. The ministry, upon the closing date of the various funding mechanism, would be relying on experts being called in to assist Ministry of Higher Education in evaluating the proposal. And once the process of evaluation has been completed, there would then be approval coming in from Ministry of Higher Education. In terms of implementation of the project, there would then be guideline being given to each researcher, and the researcher has to refer to the guideline in terms of the implementation. There would then be the monitoring being done on the basis of report being submitted online also every 6 months, and the ministry would be meeting up with the respective RMC, Research Management Center, to look at the auditing process, and eventually there would be the end of report phase where the output and the impact would then be collated, and then be passed on to central agency in terms of determining the overall success of the funding mechanism for Ministry of Higher Education. So basically, this describes the whole process of the funding mechanism of at Ministry of Higher Education. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically, if you were to refer to the guideline, there is also there is also another guideline which is known as Tadbir Urus Dana Penyelidikan. Basically, this is actually the operational document to be referred to by researcher as well as RMC, Research Management Center, in terms of the project implementation, and the component for the various section available in the operation for the implementation of the research project covers reporting, financial management, the monitoring that needs to be done, the terms of reference for the researcher, the terms of reference for the research management office, and there is also the 5th component which look at the ethics of conducting the research, as well as making sure that the integrity of data can be complied to during the implementation of the project. So dalam dokumen, right, perlu saya terangkan di sini, dalam kita memohon grant FRGS dan PRGS, ada garis panduan yang perlu kita rujuk, ada dokumen takbir urus, dan ada juga satu lagi very important component, the policy document being put up by the government of Malaysia. So you need to be referring to that. And for my presentation, untuk persembahan saya pagi ini, saya berharapkan I should be able to explain to you the new policy document that has been introduced by government of Malaysia, the guideline associated it, new guideline being proposed by Ministry of Higher Education, as well as new way of us implementing the project. Dokumen pertama, policy baru yang diperkenalkan, syarat-syarat baru pemohonan, dan yang ketiganya output baru yang telah ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now one of those significant changes being implemented. I've shared this slide in my last presentation to UPSI. Now, the way it is actually being evaluated at Ministry of Higher Education previously, from 2020 and before that. If we want to submit any new submission for research funding, we have to comply to the 9 priority areas under what is known as Vision 2020. Now, since the ending for Vision 2020 comes into effect on 31st December 2020, so in terms of referring to the new policy document, the 9 priority areas is no more applicable. Right? Itu kita kena faham lah. Right? Kalau sekiranya kita memohon permohonan yang lalu, we have submitted our previous submission, dan katakan sekarang tu, katakan permohonan ditolak dalam kita yang lalu, untuk permohonan baru, kalau sekiranya kita nak submit ataupun kita nak hantar permohonan baru, we have to make changes to the policy document yang digunakan sebagai rujukan. Right? Kita tak boleh menggunakan 9 bidang keutamaan negara starting from this year. Right? In fact, the 9 priority area has been expanded to cover 15 new areas. So remember that, it is no more 9 priority areas. Now, the way it is actually being evaluated at ministry, if the proposal comes in under the funding of transdisciplinary as well as long-term research grant scheme, the research cluster would be processing or evaluating the proposal. Now, if the proposal or if the funding is under fundamental research grant scheme or prototype research grant scheme, then the way it is being evaluated would be done at the domain level. So we have to remember, if you talk about domain, there are 7 domains that we have to be referring to, and we have to determine ourselves which domain do we want to place the proposal. If someone comes from the engineering faculty, then the best domain would be technology and engineering domain. Now, if someone comes from the faculty of science, then the suitable domain would be pure and applied science. If someone comes from education sector, the best domain would be social science, right? For the new application to be processed. So, kena ingat, domain masih lagi wujud, research cluster masih lagi wujud. So, I'll be explaining to all of you the 15 new area under shared prosperity vision. Ada 15 bidang keutamaan yang dikena pasti di bawah wawasan kemakmuran bersama yang akan dilaksanakan sehingga tahun 2030. Dr. Nojan, tolong. Okay, so this is new. It is available on the website. This document should be referred to if we want to decide which priority area that we want to submit our application. So if someone wants to do further study on this policy document, it is available on the website. It is known as Framework for Shared Prosperity Vision, SPV, and if someone was to refer to this particular document, the 15 new priority areas next, Dr. Nojan, is listed here, right? So it started with financial hub all the way down to tourism as a major income earner for the country. And number 15 on the list would be Malaysia Truly Asia, which cover all aspects about tourism and potential income generation for the country. Now, let me just share with you, if you do research on IR, Industrial Revolution 4.0, then the best priority area would be under KEGA 3, IR 4.0. So if you are looking at, say for example, automation at the industry level, then just prepare the proposal, and then if there is a need for you to identify the relevant priority area, it should be KEGA number 3. KEGA stands for Key Economic Growth Activity, and number 3 refers to IR 4.0. If you are thinking of looking at new commodity, for example, then it comes under KEGA number 7, which is new commodity for Malaysia, and this is known as Commodity Malaysia 2.0. If you are focusing on halal issue in the country, then the relevant KEGA would be KEGA number 6, and that should be listed in your proposal. And I'm sure if you were to look at the new format for my grant, you have to identify the relevant KEGA in the submission of your proposal. Right.
Sorry, interrupt. If education, to which KEGA we should map or align with?
Ini, I
Do you
think, what you can do, Dr. Nojan, I think you can identify KEGA number 3, which is IR 4.0.
Okay, Datuk, thanks.
Right? Because I think the country is actually pushing for IR 4.0, and one of the essential components would be skilled workers, besides automation. Okay. Now, next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now the second document would be the new Dasar Sains Teknologi Inovasi Negara, which is actually part of Shared Prosperity Vision 2020 to 2030. And basically, the whole idea for the new draft for STI, Science, Technology, Innovation, is actually to bring about new economic growth for the country. And the essential element for the STIN is what is known, next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, this is actually the full document, which is also available on the website of Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Now, I think if you want to do further study on this, the associated document would be 1010 My STE Economic Framework. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so the 10 technology driver that needs to be pushed by researcher in the country is listed here. So these are the 10 priority areas: 5G, 6G for telecommunication, all the way to bioscience technology, which covers looking at new agriculture technique, that advanced agriculture method that can improve productivity as well as bringing about more wealth to the country. So if you can refer these are areas that will be given emphasis by MOSTI, 5G, 6G sensor technology, 4D, 5D printing, advanced material, all the way down to bioscience technology. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay. Now, further description given by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation would be this framework, the implementation of the various initiatives under the STIN 2021 to 2030. And the good thing about this document is it describes the 10 socio-economic driver, which is actually all the way from sustainable energy down to environment. One of it is education. Kalau tengok, so in this particular case, education is being given emphasis. Now, if you were to look at the driver needed under the 1010 My STE, okay, which I've described just now, 5G all the way down to bioscience. So basically, anything that we do in terms of our research, say for example, advanced material in education, so it should be translated in tertiary education, and it could probably be starting at the secondary education. So that would be among the new things that we need to be doing in terms of carrying out research in the country.
So there is sorry Datuk to interrupt. Okay, so there is question in chat. What about health and medical research? I just go directly because you are discussing on this.
Okay, there is a document which I've prepared here for health sciences. Next one, Dr. Nojan. So if you were to look at the socio-economic driver kan, yang tadi on the horizontal side there are 10. One of those is education. There is also one sector being identified, and this is actually medical and health care, socio-economic driver, and the vertical refers to the technology driver, in which we as researchers should be putting priority. We need to be looking at the current state of technology in the country now, and what are the key technology that we need to be doing in making sure that the current technology can be leapfrog to bring Malaysia to a higher level in terms of the technology that we have in the country. So what is listed here is the new technology driver that is required for the country under the medical and healthcare socio-economic driver. So basically, if we talk about the current challenges, which is the pandemic for COVID-19, this policy document describes the various research that needs to be carried out. Say, for example, if we want to develop new antiviral treatment for COVID-19, so the technology that we should be referring to would be gene editing, known as CRISPR, if you were to look here. So this is one of the key technology that has been identified by the Academy of Science. So anything that looks at CRISPR as a new technology or as a new tool to develop antiviral or even diagnostic kit, this would be given emphasis under the new STI policy for the country. So this describes the relationship of new technology driver in bringing about new socio-economic or new wealth for the country, for the medical as well as the healthcare sector. So basically, to me, I think if you want to jumpstart in terms of understanding what is required, just look at this particular document, 1010 My STIE framework, for us to come up with various projects. And my observation for this particular document, if we want to submit new project under TRGS, transdisciplinary as well as long-term research funding, there is a need for us to refer to this particular document, strategize on how do we fulfill each technology that is required, and if we feel that we can form a new team to address this issue, that would be something that we should be doing once we have completed the submission of F as well as PRGS, because I'm very sure the new call for proposal under transdisciplinary as well as LRGS would be looking at what do you call it, technology that is needed as identified under the 1010 My STE framework. Right? So this would be additional homework that needs to be done by respective RMC at each university. Just look at my STE document and strategize how do we form various group within the university and connecting this group with outside university or other partners to university so that we would be able to address the various identified technology that has been put up under this particular document. Okay, so next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so if you need to do further detail, what I've given you is just 1 out of 10. So if you want to know the rest, by all means, please retrieve this document from either Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, or you can go to Academy of Science Malaysia website and just get the document from the website, from this website. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so I will take 5 minutes break to entertain question at the moment. So I've completed my part on explaining to you. If there is a need for you to relate your proposal to the policy document, please refer to 3 essential policy documents. The first document would be Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. The second policy document, okay, so under Shared Prosperity Vision document, we have to relate our proposal to one of the 15 KEGA, right? Now, the second document that we have to refer to would be the new policy on dasar science, technology dan inovasi, and the third important policy document would be 1010 My STIE framework. In order for us to say that whatever we do for the new submission, either F all the way up to L, this would be in compliance with the 3 policy documents that the government has produced for all of us. So, any questions so far? We'll take a break before we move to the next phase.
Okay, Datuk, we already have several questions at chat section here. Okay, the first question is, I think this one is related to 10 to 10 My STIE. What about health and medical research? And then
Okay,
what
now-
about psychology research? And the other one is on the mass communication research and biodiversity and environment.
Okay, now let me tell you what I've done is just to pick up an example from the respective document. I've also mentioned in my presentation that if you need further detail, then the best way of going about this is actually to retrieve the document. Now, I've yet to study completely the whole document. And to answer that question, I'm handicapped in that sense, but I would like to ask you to refer to the 1010 My STIE framework in order for us to understand. Essentially, what is needed in terms of our submission for F and P, the most important thing is for us to identify KEGA, right? Now, I'm sure if we talk about education, it is actually being stated there. So if you want to refer to my STIE, then if your relevant expertise is in education, so just refer to my STIE framework and identify that your socio-economic level is education. So that would be what is needed in terms of our submission for F and P, right? Now, in terms of the evaluation, once you submit it, and you identify that you are under education, which is one of the socio-economic driver, then the domain for the subdomain for the domain for social science would be processing your application, and we will not be looking at the relevance of your proposal in relationship to the document. We will be looking at the technical issue that you would like to raise in your proposal. Okay. Now I know if you know the full detail, you can relate to the content of that particular section. But it is enough to say that once you fill up the 3 policy document, that will enable your submission to be processed further under the relevant domain. Itu ya setakat ni. Right? Now, if you need to apply under PRGS or LRGS later on, then I think there will be opportunity for the panel at Ministry of Higher Education to discuss further the relevance of your submission in relation to the detail under my STIE framework, right? For the online system, which is applicable for F and P, since the application is too big, I think to me, it is adequate that you fill up the relevant policy document and that's it. We will then be processing your application. But when it comes to higher funding mechanism, LRGS as well as TRGS, there will be further interaction between the evaluator and the researcher in terms of seeing how you connect to the various identified programs being identified in the document of my STIE framework. Suffice to say, for PRGS and F, as long as you can associate to the relevant KEGA and Malaysia socio-economic as well as the technology that you wish to submit. Itu ya. That's all that I can answer to that particular question. Alright. I will be studying the document further, but if there is any further clarification, let me know, and I will just be going deeper into the section that you have submitted to me just now. Boleh setakat tu. I'm handicapped right now to know all the detail about 10 socio-economic driver as well as 10 technology driver that is needed to push for all that. Boleh?
Okay,
Second
Datuk.
question.
Kat sini ada lagi, Datuk.
Boleh.
I'm not sure yang ni sama mungkin yang macam Datuk cakap tadi lah. What about non-COVID research? And under IR 4.0, is it include infrastructure and maintenance using artificial intelligence?
Benar tu. Kalau if you were to look at, say for example, IR 4.0, automation is key element for IR 4.0. So if you happens to be an engineer and say for example you have a manufacturing problem coming in where you prefer to do automation, then this can be placed under IR 4.0, which is actually an important area being identified under WKB or SPV 2030. Right? So anything that you propose, if it fits under KEGA, that will be given prominence. Now, I would like to stress here that the policy document is open. It is not limiting research, right? So anything that you propose and the end result would just be increasing productivity, that will be something that will be considered by KPT.
Okay, Datuk, ni ada lagi one more question. There is already a grant in MOSTI for COVID research. If we submit proposal on COVID research to FRGS or PRGS, will the proposal be rejected due to technical knockout on the reason that MOSTI already allocated grants for this area?
No, there will be panel from KPT sitting on MOSTI panel. Now, and likewise, if we were to look at funding for COVID, there has been an opening being done last year by KPT itself. So anything that has been funded, it will not be funded again. So anything that is not covered by the previous funding, it will be considered under the new under the new funding mechanism. So basically that would be the basis. Anything that has been funded before, it will not be covered again. So the idea that you wish to introduce, it should be novel. Right? Now, ada satu question tadi just now on education being placed under KEGA 14. Kan? But I think as long as you can, the best thing to do is actually to look at the policy document, what is stated under KEGA, right? Now, what I've told you, what I've shared with you is education is being identified under 1010 my STA, so no issue about it. Now, if it is not listed under KEGA, what do you do about it? So my advice to you is go for the full detail on what is being described under KEGA 3 in relationship to productivity and how do you produce skilled worker that will be required for IR 4.0. Right? Now, for other education sector, right, say for example early childhood education, I think the best thing for you to do is actually to look at the relevant KEGA that would be associated with early childhood education, right? So that would be my advice. I'm not saying that education not being given prominence under KEGA one of the 15 KEGA. It doesn't mean that it is not important. It is important, but you need to find the relevant emphasis being put up under each respective KEGA. Itu ya, boleh
Okey Datuk. Okey Datuk, saya rasa ni penting juga satu soalan ni sebab di UPSI ni kami bukan saja fokus education tetapi juga social science ya. Salah satu
Okay.
juga daripada kita punya niche
Okay.
penyelidikan. Bagaimana fundamental issue dalam social science seperti sejarah, geografi, pengajian Islam?
Oh, ini
Yang ni kita nak mapkan dengan yang macam mana ni KEGA ni?
okay. I think we better go back to KEGA balik, Dr. Nojan. Ini
Kejap Datuk.
Okay, now kalau tengok ini kata social science kalau tadi dia kata education bawah KEGA 14 perkhidmatan termaju dan moden misalnya right. Now, I think there is a possibility of putting your education under advanced services or modern services. And now, in this particular aspect, one important area that you can propose under KEGA 14 would be the use of what do you call it? The various teaching tools, especially if you were to see what we face right now during the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot have face-to-face education process. So, if you were to look at education tool that can be developed, so that can be part of modern services as well as advanced services lah. Now, kalau balik kepada soalan social science, especially on the aspect of kata pengajian Islam, I think one of those things being given emphasis under KEGA ni, one of those things is Islamic finance. So the foundation for you to let the public understand about Islamic finance is also part of Islamic study. So that can be incorporated under KEGA 1. The second the second KEGA, which is also important related to Islamic study, would be Halal Hub, which is under KEGA number 6. So basically, this would be the two major driver for Islamic study. If you talk about other subject like history, uh, opportunity that you can look at would be uh, kalau tengok ni Malaysia truly Asia is actually one form of us highlighting our history. So instead of looking at history per se, you can look at ways for us to promote history as part of KEGA number 15, Malaysia truly Asia. How do you develop tools just to show the history of Malaysia in a multimedia way. Right? That would be opportunity under KEGA 15 which is actually promoting Malaysia as a tourist destination throughout the world. So basically itu how I would answer those questions. Boleh Dr. Nojan? Itu kata how about values? Ini banyak soalan ni dia lebih bertanyakan kepada saya sebagai expert for KEGA. I'm not an expert on KEGA. Right? Apa yang saya boleh lakukan is dalam permohonan FRGS dan PRGS bila kita rasakan kata proposal kita address KEGA number 3, just put in KEGA in the relevant section the KEGA that you have identified relevant to your proposal. Now, you will not be graded on whether the KEGA that you have selected to diberi markah ataupun tak. There's no right, wrong or right answer. If you identify your project to the relevant KEGA, that is good enough because in the reporting by ministry to the central agency, one of those things that the ministry has to identify is how many projects that has been approved at Ministry of Higher Education that is covered under KEGA number 3. Right? And then the further information that will be transmitted by Ministry of Higher Education, the detail of the various research project under KEGA number 3. Right? My task at Ministry of Higher Education is to look at the technical aspect, not so much on whether how does it fulfill KEGA. Itu ya, saya nak jawab macam tu. To ask me to explain further KEGA and what is the content of KEGA tu, I'm handicapped in that sense. Yang saya nak bagi nasihat to all of you is, once you have a proposal ready, then there is a need for you to associate that particular proposal to the relevant KEGA. Right? If it is related to agriculture, right, and it covers advanced agriculture, then you should be listing your project as KEGA 13. Itu ya? Boleh Wah, very tough question this time around, Dr. Nojan.
Okey Datuk, boleh.
Boleh
Ada banyak lagi lah ni yang berkaitan sama lah, semua tanya berkaitan KEGA. Saya ingat tadi Datuk dah explain lah jawapan tu tadi.
Okay, so
Cuma
itu
yang
kata,
tadi yang kata tak ada based on pemarkahan ke untuk kalau mapping to the wrong KEGA, itu
tak
pun
ada.
there is no
Itu
issue kan Datuk?
itu bukan kita tanggungjawab. Kita sebagai macam ketua domain is to make sure kata the technical merit is being evaluated. Okay, the science that you have applied is valid. Itu ya. Right? Now, in terms of the policy maker at Ministry of Higher Education, that would be the second aspect of it. The PTDs at Ministry of Higher Education will be looking at the detail of the various project that has been approved and see whether it is in relation or is connected to the various KEGA being identified under shared prosperity vision. Right? Our task and your task is actually to come up with proposal, look at the proposal, and tadi kan dikatakan the impact. Okay, the impact tu under KEGA mana satu? Itu ya. Itu yang saya dapat jawab sekarang ni. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Kita masuk second part
Okey Datuk.
Okay, now this would be the criteria. Ini saya bukan ada satu lagi kah, Dr. Nojan? Ini
Ada satu lagi yang slide tu. Yang ni pun ada juga dalam ni.
okey. So
Datuk nak yang mana satu? Nak yang ni?
satu lagi.
Totally a new slide?
No, it is supposed to, okay. Tak apa, just go ahead, share that screen. Just share that screen.
Okay, kejap ya Datuk. Siti ni yang tengah bantu ni.
Okay, now ada syarat-syarat baru in terms of putting detail to your proposal. You have to remember, one important component is for you to associate your project to the policy document. And the second part is there are new conditions being put up by Ministry of Higher Education in terms of the output. Now, when we look at the processing, we will be looking at this detail. Now, this would be the 6 new criteria that I will be highlighting to you. Now, satu, kalau sekiranya kita merupakan pensyarah, satu lagi, Dr. Nojan, I think this is not relevant. Satu lagi. Okey, ada 6 yang saya senaraikan tadi. Yang hak nombor 1 tu dia melihat dari segi kalau sekiranya kita merupakan pensyarah kontrak. Bukan pensyarah kontrak baru, tapi pensyarah kontrak yang telah capai usia bersarah. Saya agak yang ni bukan yang terkini punya tu, Dr. Nojan. Ada yang the second version saya hantar kali kedua.
Ni yang second version Datuk.
Second version. Tak apa, bring me back to tadi syarat tu.
Yang syarat tadi juga
Syarat.
Okey,
Ya.
alright, okey.
Okay. Okay, now this would be among others. Patah balik. Okay, the new I would say syarat baru. The new condition or the new rules being applied right now. The first one that we need to remember, we need to be understanding is 01 refers to if we are expatriate staff, right? Now, we are allowed to submit our proposal on the condition that we still have at least 1 year contract with our institution, right? Now, what I've done here is actually to put up what has been stated in 2020. For 01-2021, in terms of our remaining time for service, for expatriate staff or staff being employed on contract basis after retirement, at the point we submit our proposal, we should be at least having 1 year remaining in terms of our employment with the institution, right? Previously, it has been stated the time remaining should be at least 2 years. For this year, the condition or the rules has been changed to expatriate staff needing at least 1 year remaining in terms of our employment with the institution. Second criteria, if we are on sabbatical for more than 6 months, we are not allowed to submit. There is also the third condition, which has been implemented last year. We need to identify one of our co-researcher as the next leader to come in if there is anything happen to us in terms of health status, right? If we are down with an illness, then the next leader to be will come in to make sure that the project will be completed on time. So that will be the condition being set up for 03. Now for 04, 05, 06, for FRGS, 04 refers to patent search, 05 refers to industrial collaborator, 06 refers to risk management. Now, if we are applying for FRGS 04, 05, 06 is still optional this year. We have discussed at length whether to put it on compulsory basis for this year, but at the end of our meeting, 04, 05, 06 is still optional. You can either do a report on 04, 05, 06 this year, and if you submit this report on 04, 05, 06, you get additional bonus point of 5%. If you don't do it, then you don't get that 5% bonus point. Now, next slide, Puan Nojan. Dr. Nojan.
Assalamualaikum, Datuk.
Ya,
Boleh saya tanya sekejap? Maaf
boleh.
ya.
Boleh.
Saya Rozana daripada Universiti Belayar. Regarding yang kontrak tu tadi, Datuk.
Okay.
Dalam guideline tu, mention 1 tahun, satu. And then nak fahamkan, tadi Datuk kata untuk expatriate. So
Right.
does it mean that yang kontrak tu untuk expatriate ataupun pensyarah kontrak? Sebab ramai yang lantikan masih dalam kontrak. So dia jadi satu dilema untuk pensyarah baru.
Okay, now
Terima kasih.
Okay, terima kasih soalan tu. Now, dalam perbincangan dari segi kontrak ni, memang Universiti Melaya dia mempunyai syarat lantikan yang berbeza untuk pensyarah baru. Right? Dia tak dilantik terus atas tahap percubaan lah. Setelah tempoh 3 tahun, kemudian staf baru tu dilantik sebagai pensyarah tetap di Universiti Melaya dan juga di USM. Lantikan permulaannya dibuat atas kontrak. Now, dalam kes ni, pensyarah baru yang dilantik sebagai kontrak memang dibenarkan untuk memohon. Definasi 01 tu syarat kontrak tu lebih terpakai kepada pensyarah expatriate dan pensyarah yang dilantik selepas perbencian. Untuk pensyarah baru di atas status kontrak, tempoh 1 tahun tu tak terpakai. Because we understand that the appointment being done at Universiti Melaya, as well as at USM, the first time someone comes into Universiti Melaya as well as USM, they are being put on contract basis. So for new staff under contract basis, you can submit your proposal. The rule is not applicable to young staff on contract basis. Boleh
Boleh Datuk, terima kasih. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, next one. Okay. Now, the other condition being put up by Ministry of Higher Education, I've mentioned just now that one of the output being stressed under FRGS, PRGS would be publication. Now, and the number that needs to be highlighted in your proposal would be 2 publication for a 2 years project as well as 2 publication for a 3 years project. Now, for researcher placing their proposal under STG, Sains Student dan Gunaan, TK, domain ICT, and SKK, Sains Kesihatan dan Klinikal. One of the 2 that you have to highlight in your proposal has to be under Web of Science. So in this particular case, it can be Q1 to Q4 as categorized under Web of Science. The second publication has to be in Scopus. for these 4 domain. Now, for other domain, SSI, especially lecturers from education, right? Domain warisan alam budaya, as well as social sciences, sastra itisas, warisan alam budaya, dan sains sosial. One of those output for publication has to be under WOS, Web of Science, and the second one can be in Scopus or ERA or MySite. So there is flexibility given for the non-sciences researcher, right? Previously, there was no condition being put up for these 2 publications. For 2021 onwards, the ministry has raised the standard for the 2 publication. For the 4 domain, STG, TK, ICT, SKK, the first publication has to be in Web of Science, and the second publication has to be under Scopus. Next. Okay. Now, the other new ruling being put up would be emolument that you can request under the budget for a PhD GRA, and this applies for a 3 years project. The maximum or the ceiling for a PhD GRA would be 2005 instead of 2002 for 2020 and before. While for MSc GRA, there is an increase in ceiling for 2,000 ringgit a month. Now, should you want someone to be placed under RA before you get them to be placed under GRA, one way of getting them to come on board is to appoint as RA, and the budget for RA can be put under vote 29, and this can be listed as enumerator, which is actually being paid on a daily basis. Okay. Now, so basically, this would be in terms of the budget, the new budget that you can request for FRGS as well as PRGS. Next. Okay. Okay, so I will stop here for the time being to entertain question.
Okay, Datuk, there are several questions here from the chat
Okay.
section. Okay, maybe I can read for you. Okay, the first question, mungkin kita pun dah jawab tadi. Saya baca syarat dalam guideline menyatakan kontrak 1 tahun. Bukan 2 tahun, ya betul tadi Datuk dah explain adalah 1 tahun. Daripada tarikh, maknanya baki perkhidmatan mesti sekurang-kurangnya 1 tahun daripada tarikh tamat.
Tarikh tutup.
Tarikh
Ya,
tutup
berkata-
penyelidikan.
Ya, tarikh
31st
tutup.
March.
Ya.
1 year from 31st March.
Okay.
At least 1 year.
Ya, at least 1 year.
Lepas tu, next question, if someone on sabbatical currently but will be back to work before the result is announced, can they apply? Sekarang tengah sabbatical, tapi balik nanti nanti sebelum result announced dah balik, boleh tak nak apply?
Dia macam ni lah. If you intend to go for sabbatical at least 6 months, during the implementation of the project, you are not allowed to apply. Right? If you happens to complete your sabbatical and you have less than 6 months of sabbatical leave before the project can commence, you have to remember the approval would normally be coming in around August. Okay, so if you are coming back before August, you will not be applied with this ruling of 6 month leave. Right? If you are on 3 months leave, contohnya, once the project has been approved, you are allowed to apply. Right? So
sorry, Prof, I'm the one who asked that question. So if I'm currently on sabbatical, but I'll be back to work in August. So
Okay,
usually the result comes out around October, November. So
Okay.
that means I can apply lah.
yes.
Okay, I thought it was before the due date of the application, so that's why I'm just checking on that.
Okay, so
Alright.
you have to remember this time around, according to client charter for KPT, we would be announcing. We are supposed to complete our evaluation by July, and the ministry is hoping to announce the result by August. So if you are coming back before August, and once the project has been announced and approved, you have to remember there is also the stage where the grant will be transferred to the respective institution, and normally the launch of the project will be somewhere around October, November. So
Okay,
if you are
thank you
coming
very
back
much,
before
Prof.
that,
Yeah.
you will not be subjected to this ruling.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alright, most welcome.
Hello, Prof. Boleh saya tanya satu soalan tentang
Yes.
sepatika ini? Saya akan ambil sepatika dari bulan 4 dan balik pada bulan 9, 5 bulan sahaja.
Okay, so
Saya apply grant ini FRGS.
ya, pasal you punya tempoh tak cukup, tak melebihi 6 bulan. Anything that is more than 6 months, they say kata you focus on your sabbatical leave. Anything less than 6 months, you are allowed. Okay?
Thank you very much, Prof.
Right. I'm not the final say tau. I think this question should be referred to Dr. Syamimi or Prof. Datuk Fauzi. I'm here more on explaining to you the discussion that we have had in terms of the new criteria being set up for FRGS, PRGS. The decision-making process does not lie with me. It
Okay.
lies with tu. Okay?
Penyelidik saya ingat kena semak dengan RMIC masing-masing nanti sebab
Yes.
saya dimaklumkan taklimat bersama RMIC akan diadakan pada hari Jumaat ini. Jadi saya nanti mohon semua penyelidik untuk double check selepas itu dengan pihak RMIC masing-masing.
Okay, that would be the best way, Dr. Nojan. Thank you very much for assisting.
Okay, kemudiannya next question. Okay, regarding co-researcher, if there are more than one co-researcher in the proposal, can the rest be from other institution? If there is already one co-researcher from the same institution, dah co-researcher satu daripada universiti yang sama, kemudian dia nak ambil daripada co yang lain.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Now, kalau tengok the way it is actually being done, if you talk about the domain, it will be processed according to the domain. Now, as long as you pick someone who has the expertise within that particular discipline, say if the proposal is under subdomain for physics, you can pick anyone who you can rely upon, and you categorize them as expert in physics. So the expertise can be within the institution, and it can be outside the institution, within the country, or it can go to the extent of you can invite someone from outside the country. If you know someone and you can convince him to be part of your team, that would be even better. Because when it comes to the grading, because one of those things that we are supposed to be grading is the composition of the team. So if we see that you're bringing in expert from other university, you get extra point for that. Our wish list as evaluator is for you to bring in expertise from outside the country, which would allow the assessment or the evaluation or the proposal to be given the highest mark in terms of composition of team. So there's no limit as to the membership of the team, and it can be from within the institution, within the country, or outside the country. Okay.
Ada lagi ni Datuk. Okay. Regarding syarat tambahan, a collaboration with industry and agency, does it means external collaboration with other non-institutional agency, public or private?
Okay. Ini dah pergi more towards the other part. Now, kalau we talk about collaboration for FRGS, I'm referring to FRGS alone. Now, there is a section under my grant where you have to describe collaboration with industry, and this is actually under additional information. If you were to look at additional information, there are 3 components that you have to fill up. The first one is patent search. The second component to it would be industry collaboration, and the third would be risk management that you have done for your proposal. Now, coming back to the team composition just now. Now, once you have someone from outside Malaysia to be part of your team, you can incorporate the outside researcher to be part of your research team. And the best way for you to do this is actually for you to get the CV of that particular person or for that international researcher, and you fill up my grant system for that particular researcher. So that once it is being compiled, the name of the international researcher appear to be part of the composition. So in this particular case, you have included the international researcher to be part of your team. Now, the other way of you doing things is you can put up outside researcher under industrial collaboration, which comes under additional info. Now, what you need from them is a letter of intent, MOU, or an MOA, a Memorandum of Understanding or Memorandum of Agreement from the organization or from that particular researcher, international researcher. Put it under LOI, and then you complete the other two. And if you complete the 3 sections under additional info, you get bonus point. So there are 2 ways of doing things. If you happen to have collaboration from industry or from international organization, place it under composition of team. You get maximum point of 5% there. Right? If your team has 3 different cohort and you have external researcher as part of your research team, the maximum mark for that particular section would be 5%. Now, if you place it under additional info as another option, you get 5% bonus point for that particular section. Boleh ya?
Okay, Datuk, ada lagi satu soalan ni from our lecturer, Dr. Claire from Faculty of Music. Journals under Emerging Sources Citation Index, ESCI, by Web of Science considered under WOS. This journal usually do not have impact factor yet.
I'm sure kalau if you look at Web of Science, selalunya this journal would be Q4, right? And as time goes, then the classification would be changed to a higher classification, Q3, Q2, Q1. So basically, if it is being listed as under Web of Science, the minimum that we take into consideration would be Q4. So as long as it is listed under Web of Science, that is good enough in terms of fulfilling publication for Web of Science. Itu ya cara saya nak jawab, Dr. Nojan.
Okay, tak apa, Datuk. Okay, lagi satu ni, 2WOS. Is it okay if we publish 2WOS? Because they require one kan? Kalau 2, is it okay?
Kalau 2, over and above.
Okay.
Over and above. So, the minimum requirement is 1 WOS, 1 Scopus for the 4 domain. But for other 3 domain, 1 Web of Science, it can be Q4, but the second publication can be either Scopus or MySite or ERA.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum, Datuk. Satu soalan, Datuk.
Ya, silakan.
Saya Ilyas daripada UPSI. Kalau dia tidak memenuhi kriteria penerbitan, adakah grant tersebut boleh tutup? Okay, kalau dia dah boleh tutup, adakah boleh apply seterusnya FRGS untuk tahun berikutnya?
Okey, ini Dr. Nojan kena tolong saya kalau someone tak fulfill one of those 2 criteria, selalunya proses blacklisting comes in lah. You be blacklisted. Selalunya tempoh blacklisting ni 2 tahun selepas tarikh tamat. So dalam tempoh tersebut memang tak boleh nak apply grant baru lah. So dalam kes ni kena refer kepada Dr. Nojan ataupun Prof Tajul lah daripada segi tempoh blacklisting. Dan kalau sekiranya dah tamat tempoh blacklisting, boleh apply grant baru dah.
Definitely, Datuk. So the RMIC will play the roles. So we will refer to the SOP or the peraturan yang KPT, BKPI dah bagi. So kita akan buat listing tu lah, Prof, sebelum kita submit, because of otherwise that all the RMICs will be off lah kalau tak tengok betul-betul the tally tu.
Okey. Okey boleh
Okey, yang ni ada juga lagi soalan SSI WAB, and saya rasa ni yang social science hardly to get publication in WOS. Can it be two Scopus index publication?
Okey. Saya akan tunjuk satu contoh bawah social science. Tapi dia promise 3Q1. Okey, so saya rasakan bila kami terima permohonan yang datangnya daripada SSI, SS ataupun WAB to say kata dia boleh promise 3Q1, yang diperlukan hanya 2. Right? And bila kita tengok nilai yang dipohon tu value for money, we certainly will support proposal yang boleh menjanjikan 3Q1 untuk social science ni. Now, if another proposal comes in daripada social science juga, tapi dia kata dia boleh hasilkan dua scopus ya. Nilainya selalunya value for money lah. So bagi kami as evaluator, we will definitely support proposal yang menjanjikan over and above daripada yang di bawah tahap minimum yang ditetapkan. Itu ya saja saya nak jawab soalan macam tu. Dalam contoh proposal yang berjaya, case study memang bawah bidang sains sosial, and dia boleh nyatakan jurnal WOS Q1. So bila kita lihat nilai grant yang diperolehi itu, bila dia kata 3Q1 for a research funding of 80,000. Right? So each paper is about 20,000. Impact tinggi. So dalam kes ni proposal tu menjanjikan satu output yang value for money. So dalam kes ni memang kita akan sokong lah. Kalau proposal datang dengan nilai 80,000, 2 scopus. We look at value for money jugalah dalam kes ni. Itu ya saya nak jawab pun. Bila kementerian kata satu WOS dan satu lagi scopus ataupun itu, kita harapkan itu dapat dipertimbangkan oleh pemohon lah. Boleh nak kata kita akan tolak, tak boleh juga, pasal ni benda baru kan, kita nak tengok juga dalam permohonan yang akan datang.
Okey Datuk, ni ada lagi satu paper hanya satu acknowledge untuk dalam satu artikel jurnal tu, saya ingat ini untuk acknowledgementnya hanya boleh untuk satu acknowledgement FRGS. Boleh ke tu? Ini saya tak faham soalan daripada yang
Itu saya nak kata. Dia kalau ikut ni yang kita faham daripada segi tadbir urus FRGS setiap penerbitan yang dikeluarkan, ini bukan permohonan ni. Masa peringkat permohonan, okey, yang selalunya kita perhatikan jumlah penerbitan dan kualiti penerbitan. Selalunya bila ditanya tiada penghargaan ataupun pengiktirafan diberikan kepada grant FRGS, dia lebih kepada proses pemantauan ataupun proses penutupan grant lah. So kalau sekiranya ikut garis panduan dan saya percaya ini juga diguna pakai di RMIC UPSI lah. Kalau sekiranya tiada pengiktirafan diberikan kepada grant FRGS, memang kita tak terima. Betul kan Dr. Naujan?
Ya betul. Dan kalau ada banyak grant
Dan
itu, banyak grant, yang pertama tu mestilah yang menyumbang utama kepada grant tu itu
yes,
dia akan counted. Dia tak akan boleh double counted. Satu
ya.
artikel untuk claim to several project.
Okey, itu memang standardnya lah kan, Dr. Naujan ya?
Ya standard tu. Dalam takbir
Okey.
urus dah jelas lah kalau di UPSI ni kita dah maklumkan kepada penyelidik kita. Okey,
Okey.
yang seterusnya PhD and Master Science. Is it the amount after we included EPF, SOCSO and SIP?
Okay, now untuk GRA ni, from what we know, and from what we observe, bila diletakkan the value of 2005, itu tak perlu SOCSO EPF. Right? Memang 2,500 tu is actually basically given to the student. Ada setengah-setengah universiti kita difahamkan dia buat potongan EPF dan juga SOCSO. Kerana the idea of GRA is actually memang there is a scheme yang mengatakan tak perlu SOCSO dengan EPF. Ada setengah-setengah universiti memang dia buat potongan. Tapi yang kita berbincang di kementerian dan memang kita katakan 2005 tu sepatutnya apa potongan diberikan kepada GRA ceiling tu. So
Ada lagi soalan Datuk?
RMIC UPSI dia UPSI dia bagi 2005 kan. Tak ada potongan EPF lah.
Kita memang tak ada libatkan potongan SOCSO dan EPF tu. Untuk tahun ni maksimum yang PhD boleh pergi is 2005 lah. Macam yang disyaratkan
Memang,
untuk Master Science 2000.
memang tak ada potongan EPF.
Tak ada.
Dia jadi memang kita akan bagi 2005 tu.
Okay.
Tapi ada setengah-setengah universiti dia buat potongan EPF dan juga potongan kat atas grant bagi sumbangan 11% sumbangan EPF tu. Yang kita faham skim GRA ni tak sepatutnya lah kita buat potongan EPF.
Okay, ada lagi satu soalan Datuk. If my research to use AI to improve disease detection, we need to involve two disciplines, AI and medicine. But here we focus on developing AI model. Will this proposal be considered in FRGS?
Okay, dia macam dalam kes ni if someone from medical faculty wishing to do study on augmented reality ataupun this kind of technology lah in terms of education ke things like that the best thing to do is to place this proposal under ICT because there is a subdomain on augmented reality, artificial intelligence, things like that under ICT. But when it comes to evaluation, for that particular proposal, the ICT domain would be processing it with the expertise being called from SKK, Sains Kesihatan dan Klinikal. Okey? Boleh nak minta bawah medical pun boleh, domain SKK ataupun hantar permohonan melalui domain ICT yang memang put emphasis on artificial intelligence.
Assalamualaikum Datuk.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mohon bertanya soalan. Saya Suzana. Saya nak bertanya, contohnya lah jika geran itu require dia output dia satu paper, tetapi pensyarah menjanjikan 2 paper sebagai output. Tetapi di akhir projek beliau tak dapat meet 2, dia hanya dapat meet 1 saja. Adakah ianya dikira achieve KPI ataupun tidak?
Ini dari segi pengurusan RMIC UPSI dia. Kalau sekiranya untuk grant FRGS dari dulu lagi memang ditetapkan 2. Tak pernah dikurangkan lah tempoh dari segi bilangan penerbitan. So kalau sekiranya dalam kes when we put up in our original proposal 2, right? And RMIC pun kata yes, it fulfill the minimum required as stated by KPT. So at the end of project, at the end of the exercise, you have to deliver 2. You cannot deliver 1. Kalau if you deliver 1, then you'll be blacklisted.
Oh, okey.
Okay?
Okey, contohnya tadi kalau dia sepatutnya requirement 2 tapi dia janjikan 3.
Right.
Tapi ending dia hanya dapat 2 sahaja. Dia tak
Okay,
dapat
so
apa yang dijanjikan. Sebab dia
okay,
janjikan
so
3.
okay, memanglah kalau when you overpromise,
Overpromise, yes.
okay, so
Ha.
in cases where you are putting up 3 more than the minimum 2, ministry will hold on to the promise that you have made in your proposal. If you say you want, if you say you promise 3, which is above the minimum requirement, when it comes to end of report, we will look for 3, not 2.
Okay.
Because during the evaluation, we look at the quantity that you promised, and since you are actually putting up an idea of value for money, instead of 3, instead of 2, you come up with 3. And on that condition, we approve the grant. So if you cannot deliver at the end of the process, kita kata you have not fulfilled your obligation.
Alright.
Okay.
Okay.
Selalunya this kind of thing would be monitored at RMIC. Betul kan Dr. Najan?
Ya, kita terpaksa memonitor kalau di peringkat RMIC Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris ni lah, kami memang memonitor lah selagi apa yang dijanjikan oleh penyelidik tu tak tercapai. Itu memang kehendak daripada KPT sendiri. Dalam sistem memang dia akan appear. Kalau you promise 5 lah you kena fulfill benda tu. Dan selagi tak fulfill, selagi tu monitoring, you kena fill up every times lah. Setahun tu ada 2, tiap tahun tu kena isi selagi tak fulfill.
Okay. Alright. So kiranya kalau tak boleh nak over promise jugalah, kena ikut minimum requirement jugalah.
Itu ada setengah tu projek 2 tahun menjanjikan PhD. In terms of bakat ataupun talent dalam proposal. So at the end of the project, if you promise PhD for a 2 years project, the ministry will take into account not MSc yang diperlukan untuk projek 2 tahun, tapi PhD. So we look at what you have promised in the proposal.
Okay.
Dr. Suzana dari fakulti mana, Doktor?
Saya pada agensi universiti luar.
Oh, okey. Nanti Doktor boleh rujuk dengan RMC masing-masing, Doktor?
Cumanya nak tahu sebab dalam status migrant tu sendiri, adakah ianya dikira KPT akan mengira sebagai ianya achieve ataupun tidak? Sebab researcher dah over promise kan. Dia sebenarnya meet the minimum requirement, tapi dalam sistem migrant tu sendiri.
Dia memang kita dari segi monitoring, we look at the quantity.
Okay. So okay, kalau tu saya ambil maklum lah.
Okay.
Okay, terima kasih Doktor.
Dr. Nojan, boleh kita ambil 10 minutes break dah sebelum kita continue lagi the next part?
Boleh. Ada juga lagi soalan ni tak macam mana Datuk?
Okay, boleh. Teruskan.
Ada sikit je lagi. Okay. Does number of publication depend on the amount of grant we applied? Meaning that higher amount, more publication?
Not necessarily. The way we do evaluation at KPT, we look at the output that you promise, right? And we look at the budget requested. If the budget is reasonable, we approve according to what you have requested for the budget as well as the output. Now, one of those things that we also take into consideration when it comes to quality of output, if you say you are going to produce not overpromise, tapi you say kata you should be able to deliver 3 papers based on the proposed study and the amount is reasonable, we say okay, you get the grant, and at the end of 2 or 3 years we will determine whether you have fulfilled your promise or not. Itu ya. Okay, so dalam kes ni, kalau if you say you put a very high figure, certain project, certain areas require expensive chemical, and if you can justify that in your budget request shouldn't be a problem for us to approve based on the budget request. Now, in our evaluation, we take into consideration that if we were to cut the budget, we have to take into consideration whether the cut will affect the outcome of the project. So it is always a balance of how much amount that you require and whether with that particular amount you would be able to deliver the output that you promised. Okay, so we seldom cut the budget to the extent that the project cannot be implemented. If, however, should that happen, once you get the approval, you can then negotiate with KPT based on the budget that has been approved for that particular proposal, right? Situation that we normally come across, the researcher put up certain budget, and once the approval comes in, the budget has been cut. So, and the researcher feels that they cannot deliver, then just inform RMIC of UPSI to just say that you would like to negotiate on the output because of the budget cut. Right? You are not forced to accept a project based on what we approve. If you see you cannot deliver the KPI at the end of the process, before you sign the agreement, before the agreement is signed between UPSI and KPT, let RMIC of UPSI to know that you wish to review the output based on the budget release. Itu ya, all that I can say. I know it is good once you receive the approval, but look at the budget to see whether you can deliver the output promise. You are not being forced to accept the budget and the output that you promise, right? There will always be negotiation process being put in place once the project has been approved.
Okey Datuk, untuk soalan-soalan yang lain tu saya ingat partisipan semua, saya mohon maaf kita mungkin tak dapat entertain semua soalan di sini sebab saya tengok soalan-soalan tu lebih kepada tadbir urus tadbir urus dana KPT. Jadi saya memohon merujuk kepada RMIC masing-masing sebab kalau kita nak entertain satu-satu ni sangat banyak So saya mohon rujuk sebab ini memang berkaitan, saya tengok keseluruhannya adalah berkaitan tadbir urus. Jadi mohon rujuk kepada RMIC masing-masing. Cuma Datuk, satu soalan terakhir sebelum kita break. Yang ni daripada Dr. Suo Yan Mei daripada Fakulti Bahasa FBK UPSI. Okay, if co-researcher from another country, beliau adalah international research lecturer. So topic can apply, can be applied focus on Malaysia only or need to cover the international co-researchers country as well? Makna fokus penyelidikan tu, topiknya tu adakah boleh Malaysia saja atau perlu Malaysia saja ataupun cover juga yang international co-researcher punya isu?
Itu saya kata kalau if you were to look at the objective of funding mechanism under KPT, it is actually more towards dia punya ayat yang digunakan penyelidikan beracuan Malaysia. So the focus is more on Malaysian context. So if the international researcher would like to study based on Malaysian experience, then I think that would be something that we encourage. But if it is actually for the funding is for comparative study between Malaysia and some other country, then I think the best thing to go for is international funding, right? When you talk about comparing Malaysia with other countries in terms of certain research topic, the way to go about it is actually to get research funding. For FRGS, PRGS, the word that you should always remember is whatever research that you do, it is actually for our consumption. Tadi dalam pembentangan tu saya kata penyelidikan yang dilaksanakan di Malaysia penyelidikan yang dilakukan oleh universiti awam dan universiti swasta beracuankan Malaysia. It is actually to look at Malaysian context.
Okey Datuk, terima kasih. Saya ingatkan kita break, kita ambil masa untuk break lebih kurang 10 minit Datuk
Okey.
boleh
Okay, and then saya nanti masuk PRGS plus also case tadi lah.
Okey boleh Datuk. Okey.
Right, terima
Okey.
kasih Dr. Nojan.
Okey. Terima kasih banyak Datuk. Okey kita break semua ya for 10 minutes. Hello, Assalamualaikum semua. Okey, Datuk, boleh kita sambung? Okay.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Salam warahmatullahi.
Waalaikumsalam.
Ada lagi. Saya tak habis nampak kan? Okey.
Okey, Datuk.
Okey.
Okey, kejap ya, kita sambung slide tadi .
Oh ya, tu. Kemudian nanti kita masuk yang satu lagi pula nah.
Okey, okey.
Okay, so the first 10 minutes will be on the other submission which is under PRGS. So this will be covered in this section, and then I will be going into 2 case study just for us to appreciate the evaluation being done. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now in terms of the new ruling being put up for FRGS 2021, the first one would be if you talk about patent search, which comes under additional info. This is still compulsory for this year. So for PRGS, you are required to submit under additional info patent search. The second component to it would be industrial collaboration, or if there is international partner that can be used in that particular section for collaboration. And the third thing that is also required is risk management. And the other thing that the ministry has also put up is in terms of publication with the industrial partner or the international partner, this would be allowed. But it is important that to know that if we want to publish with the collaborator, you have to get the IP out first, because once you publish, before you obtain the IP, then you have within a year time frame in order to file for the IP. So always remember that, right? For PRGS this time around, joint authorship with the industrial partner or international partner is encouraged, but it will be good if you can get the IP first and then you go into publication. You are not allowed to disclose, and after a lapse of 1 year, only then you file for the patent or IP. Now, in terms of the output for PRGS, now coming back to PRGS as compared to FRGS, the output for FRGS would not be into talent as well as publication. The only output requested by Ministry for PRGS would be IP, and this time around, in terms of the IP to be generated from PRGS funding for a 2 years project, the output requested by Ministry would be 2 IP, and one of them must be copyright. So basically, in this sense, the second one must either be a patent file, or you can go for industrial design. Or if you happens to be working on software, then you have to file a second copyright on the source code for that particular project. If the project is for a 1 year duration, the output requested by Ministry of Higher Education would be just 1 IP. So basically, that would be the new ruling. Okay, we have got question coming in whether trade secret can be considered as IP. I will deal with that question later on. Next one, Dr. Nojat. Okay, that's all. Now, coming back to the question just now, I will be moving to the second part of my presentation. Now, if you talk about IP, it can range from patent all the way down to trade secret. Now, when it comes to trade secret, the process involved would be you have to notify your innovation office, or in this particular case at UPSI, RMIC, because innovation as well as research management is being carried out by RMIC. Now, in the case where you file a trade secret with RMIC, once it is being filed, the content of the trade secret will not be made available to the process of auditing. Whatever that you have filed as trade secret, this would be an internal process that is being managed by RMIC UPSI. Now, when it comes to auditing at the end of the project, we cannot for sure determine whether the trade secret would be related to your project. So in this particular case, at the ministry level or at our level, as evaluator as well as the audit team, for trade secret, it is difficult for us to determine whether it is related to, it can be connected to the output of the PRGS. So in this context, we don't recognize trade secret as an output for IP under PRGS. The least that we want is something that we can know for sure that it is related to the output of the PRGS. If you talk about the other IP that you can file, say for example, if you wish to file for a trademark, now when based on our experience looking at trademark as an output of IP for PRGS, trademark is something which cannot be related to the output of the PRGS. So in this particular case, our understanding is we also do not recognize trademark to be an output of your PRGS. So the minimum IP that we would like you to provide as evidence as an output for PRGS would be trade secret. Copyright, because copyright would provide detail on what you have done, and that can be connected to your PRGS. So anything that is copyright, industrial design, or better still, a patent, that will be acceptable as an output for IP for PRGS completed project. So I hope I've already explained in terms of IP that would be needed for you to be considered as acceptable output for PRGS. Okay, now, so that covers for PRGS. The next section would be on case study. And for this, I'll be showing you one project which we have approved in last year's cycle. And the second project would be something related to UPSI, which we have not approved. And the idea of me sharing here is actually for me to discuss further with the researcher as well as with other friends at UPSI in terms of what needs to be done in making sure that when you submit a proposal, that would be to the minimum standard that we have decided at the evaluation stage. Right? Now, can we move to case study, Dr. Nojan?
Okay. Kita terus move case study. Siti, terus move case study.
Okay. Now this would be important. Okay.
Okay,
I will
alright.
stop here. Can you project the screen? Now, when we do the evaluation, one of those things that we take into consideration is the title. And the title that you should be putting into your proposal should reflect fundamental study. So some of the example that I've put up here are example to reflect that the title of project would be fundamental in nature. So if you can refer to what I've published here, so title like elucidation of certain structure, right? This would be fundamental. Investigation of different types. So that would be the title that we would like to see when you submit proposal that can be placed under FRGS. The role of certain thing, right? So I've listed here example of title that you can use to be put up as part of your proposal. Now, if you are looking at opportunity to apply under FRGS, the title, next slide please, Dr. Nojan. Next slide. Tak ada, patah balik, tak ada. So, when you talk about title, so, patah balik. Tak ada, okay, no problem. The title that you should be putting in as part of your PRGS should be development, followed by the full detail of the project. Now, the second example for PRGS would be you use the word prototype, because prototyping is part of PRGS funding. Now, when it comes to evaluation of FRGS, you have to remember that there are 9 criteria, and under the 9 main criteria, there are 27 sub-criteria for this 9 main evaluation criteria. The first one would be the title. Right? The title has to reflect. Okay. Ini bukan bukan ini tadi punya Dr. Nojan, sorry, I cannot control. Okay, tak apa, ini saya masuk balik semula ni, pemakahan untuk PRGS. It is supposed to be explained further to the participant. Let's go back to yang the main evaluation criteria for FRGS. Evaluation criteria for FRGS. FRGS.
Assalamualaikum Datuk. Sorry Datuk, saya interrupt sekejap. Saya Prof Dr. Suryani, TNCPI UPSI. Saya just nak sampaikan salam daripada Yang Berbahagia Datuk VC, dan kami nak mengucapkan jutaan terima kasih Yang Berbahagia Datuk untuk bengkel ini. Dan saya pun tak nak join lama Datuk sebab ada bengkel, ada meeting lain selepas ni. Cuma kepada semua jugalah saya nak ucapkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Bahagia Datuk, dan untuk semua juga saya harapkanlah melalui bengkel yang telah dibuat ini dapat membantu penyelidik-penyelidik di dalam UPSI khususnya dan penyelidik-penyelidik dari luar untuk sama-sama lah Datuk untuk mendapat menghasilkan penyelidikan fundamental yang berimpak tinggi dan juga bermanfaat kepada negara, insyaAllah. So terima kasih Datuk, boleh teruskan. Terima kasih Datuk
Alright, terima kasih Prof. Suryani. Hope one day we can meet in person again.
Yes, definitely Datuk. Thank you very much Datuk for your kind help.
Okay, Alhamdulillah.
Please proceed Datuk. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, let's go back to the main criteria. Now, you have to remember when we do the evaluation on your proposal, we will be basing on this 9 criteria. Next slide tu, kalau boleh tunjuk yang bawah tu. Bawah sikit lagi. Number 13. Number 13. Nombor 13. Okey, ini patah balik lagi. Patah balik lagi. Okay, now. Okay, boleh Okay, satu lagi slide before this. Okay, so Satu lagi slide. Nombor 1 dia pula. Okay. So I'm sharing with you the 9 main criteria being used by us as evaluator to your proposal. The first thing that we look at is title. Under title, we should be evaluating whether it is specific in nature. Like I mentioned just now, if you use title like elucidation, mechanism of action, that would be fundamental in nature. And then the title should also be brief and reflect the content of the proposal. Now, the second component that we normally look at would be executive summary. Now, under executive summary, we look at problem statement, objective, methodology, expected output, significant of output. And you have to remember, this executive summary is something that you can do once you have completed the whole proposal. The exercise for executive summary would be cut and paste. And if you were to look under executive summary, there are problem statement, objective, methodology, expected output, significant of output. Now, I must remind you that all these 5 contribute to at least 60% of your total mark, right? And you have to remember, under section C, there will be problem statement. And under section C also, there will be objective. Under section C, also there will be methodology. Expected output comes later. So if you were to focus on section C, I can say for you that if you put a lot of time and effort under section C for research information, you can at least get a maximum of 80%. And in order to determine the success of your application, focus more on this problem statement all the way down to significant of output. Put a lot more time to it, because this will give 80% of your scoring. And in order for the project to be recommended, you have to score minimum of 80. Once you achieve 80, your project will be graded as recommended. If you score above 85, then your project will be graded as highly recommended. So for executive summary, which we are supposed to be evaluating, these 5 criteria is something that we pay a lot of attention to during our evaluation. Next one, next slide, please. Next slide, Dr. Nojan. Slide berikutnya. Slide berikutnya, Dr. Nojan. Puan Siti, boleh ubah tak Puan Siti? Okey. Ini dah laju sangat. Ya, nombor 4 tadi. Nombor 4. Sorry, patah balik. Patah balik lagi. Kan tadi title, okey ni nombor 3 ni. Mula nombor 3 tadi balik. Okey. Research background. Okey. This is where you have to put in your literature review. Alright. And then once you have done your literature review, you have to put down the listing of the references that you have used. And in the listing of references, there should be journal that has been published in the last 5 years. Should you require the earlier dated references as the principle to be used for your research, then you can do so. But we encourage you to put in a lot more references in the last 5 years, right? And you have to also state whether your proposal is in line. Normally, if you put in WKB, the STIN, 1010 STIE framework, you should be able to score maximum point for research background. The next criteria that we normally take into consideration during the evaluation is the objective, right? And under the objective, things that we look for, things like problem statement, research question. Next, Puan Siti. Okay, methodology is also very important. So you have to remember, once you have outlined the objective, the objective would be something that we use to indicate whether that covers or that relates back to the title of your proposal. from the objective, you have to then go into methodology, and each methodology should relate back to each objective that you identify. So under methodology, you should be describing clear and detailed methodology. You should be able to research, you should be able to achieve research objective, and it should also include graphics, as well as flowchart, Gantt chart, things like that. Expected result, very simple for FRGS. In terms of talent, PhD for 3 years project or 2 masters. If it is for 2 years duration, it is just 1 master that will be needed for you to put in for expected result. Publication is also another important criteria. For 2 years or 3 years program, it should be 2 publication, and for certain domain, it should be either 1 in WOS, where or sign, and the second one must be in Scopus. For SSIs, Sastra Ikhtisas, WAB, social, it should be 1 under WS, and the second one can be either in Scopus, Mindsight, or ERA. And then IP is bonus. Next one, 7. Number 7. Okay. Number 7. Okay. Now, as I mentioned to you, if you focus on the first 6, that carries about 80% of your mark. The rest comes from track record and composition of team. Now, for track record, we look at things like if you have managed and completed a national grant. Okay. Now, for someone who has been appointed as an associate professor or a professor, there shouldn't be any problem in terms of track record. But for a young staff coming into applying FRGS, track record would be a challenge. Now, in terms of track record, things that we look for would be you have become a project leader for internal funding at your university. Say if you have or you are actually doing FRGS racer grant, then clearly specify that you are a project leader for that particular early funding mechanism. You should also take note that in your composition of the team that you wish to propose under FRGS, there should be at least 3 different cohort of researcher. Right? 2 ways of you putting the cohort. It can be based on professor, associate professor, as well as senior lecturer within the team, or you can put up your cohort of researcher based on age, more than 50, someone within 40 to 50, and you get another person to be below 40. If you have 3 cohort, then you should be able to get maximum point. Now, if you have international researcher to be part of your team, that will also be a bonus to your proposal. So if you get the CV and you get agreement from your international researcher to be part of your team, fill up the CV for the international researcher, and once you have completed filling up the CV for that international researcher, the name will appear as part of your team member. Now, the number 8 that we normally evaluate is quality of proposal, meticulous. If we see a lot of graphic in your proposal, this would be things that we give points to your proposal. Number 9, element of FRGS criteria. Now, normally for FRGS criteria, in order to give grade to this number 9, as evaluator, I would normally rely on pattern search. Right? If you do submit a pattern search, then I'll be opening up your pattern search report, and I look at the trend on the number of pattern being generated over the years. If the report shows that there is an increasing trend in the profile of pattern being generated associated with your research, I can say for sure that it is novel, because there are a lot of people working into that particular area, and there are new pattern being generated for that particular topic. So these are 9 elements in terms of scoring. Next one, Puan Siti. Okay, I'm so sorry for the fine print, but if you can relate back to the 9 criteria just now, if you were to look at title, the points to be given would be maximum of 5. If you look at research background, the maximum point that we can allocate would be 15. For objective, maximum point that we can allocate would be 15. Methodology would be 25. So coming back to what I've told you under executive summary, so research background, objective, methodology, in this particular case would contribute about 55% of the total mark. Right? So since this carry a lot of weight, focus a lot more attention and time to these 3 components. Under research background, you have to put up your research question, your problem statement, and then the research question. Once you have settled that part, you will then be going into objective. Now, I do receive question on how many objectives that you have put up. So to answer that question, I'll be showing you the case study so that you keep to the limit of the number of objectives that needs to be put up in your proposal. Now, once you have put up your objective, each objective should be outlined according to the methodology that needs to be done in order to achieve the objective, right? So if you have 3 objectives, then there should be at least 3 different methodology to achieve each objective, right? 1 methodology to each objective. And the situation that we normally face is when we look at the objective and the methodology being stated in the proposal, there's a mismatch, right? The objective can be very long, but the methodology would just be very simple. And we, as evaluator, we cannot relate which methodology would fulfill which objective. So always remember, I'll be showing you case study to show that there are certain number of objectives being outlined, and under the methodology, what are the methods that will be employed in order to ensure that each objective will be fulfilled, and eventually the project would be capable of achieving the whole research question being put up. Next one. Next slide. So expected result, another 10%. Very simple for you to get 10% for a 3 years project, 2 publication. If you can list the name of the journal, that would be even better. Now, in terms of talent, for a 3 years project, 1 PhD or 2 masters. For 2 years, right? That would be, in order to fulfill the expected result, would be just 1 MSc. Track record is something that we look at, and the guideline is 3 different cohort being formed to address the research question. Quality, we look at proper use of language. We look at the graphic that you have put up. Novelty would be something that we evaluate based on pattern search report. So, right, the highest just now would be methodology plus objective. Expected result is something that you can get a maximum of 10% because this has been disclosed. So once you achieve above 80, in this particular case 89.5, the project will be placed as highly recommended. Now, the other thing that you should also take note is for FRGS, if you happen to complete pattern search, you have collaboration with industry, and you fill up the risk management table, you get an additional 5%. So the total marks when you fill up these 3 components will be 105. If you don't have this, since it is still optional, you get only a maximum of 100%. Okay, next one. I think it's case study good. Okay, this is to summarize. right? If you score for 2021, we still utilize 2022 scoring table. If you achieve 80, above 80, the proposal will be placed as recommended. If you score above 85, then the project would be categorized as highly recommended. And usually we would be supporting recommended as well as highly recommended proposal for funding. And let me bring you back to the 9 criteria just now. Now, if we were to look at the minimum score of placing a proposal under recommended, which is 80, there are 9 criteria. So each criteria should have a minimum of a score of 9 out of 10, right? 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So each criteria should be scored at the level of 9. If we put the score at 8, then the proposal would fall below 80, and that will be placed as not recommended. Always remember that when you do the write-up for methodology, for example, make sure you come up with a perfect methodology so that we can place a score of 9 or 10 for that particular section. If you get a score of 5, the chances of that proposal being rejected would be high, right? And that's why it is important that if you want to score bonus point, make sure you fill up pattern search, LOI, with the industry as well as risk management. Next, boleh. Okay, so I'm going into case study of a successful proposal. Next. Okay, okay. Ini hold on. Okay, if you talk about title to indicate prototyping, this will be example of title which reflect prototyping that fits PRGS. Development and clinical evaluation. Development, the word development, prototyping, right? Development of sensor. So this would be the title that you should be using for PRGS. Next. Okay, next pergi ke case study ya. Okay, next. Okay, I'll show you one example which is actually a hybrid project. Because this comes from a faculty of pharmacy, and the proposal is more related to social sciences. If you were to look at the title, right? This is actually for novel identification, characterization, evaluation, the impact of drug-related problem among thalassemia patient. Thalassemia patient would be someone who has problem with the liver metabolism. Now, the other thing that you should be giving attention is the keyword here. Now, this keyword should match the keyword that you are putting up under pattern search. We see cases where keyword here does not match the keyword being used for pattern search. So in that particular case, we will put our comment to say that the keyword for the project is not related to the pattern search being done under pattern search report. Next one. Okay, this proposal comes from a senior lecturer, very young, from the Faculty of Pharmacy in UKM. Next. Okay, so in this particular case, the research domain being chosen was social science, and this relate to sub research domain management. Okay, someone from the science cluster going into social science. Now, this is actually for 2 years duration. So when you talk about 2 years duration, the output expected will be 2 publications. For 2021, it should be, since this is social science, right? Someone from the science wishing to do a study under social science. And perhaps this can be used as an example for you to write out for education, which is also another subdomain under social science. So for 2 years, the minimum required for this year would be 1 Web of Science, and the second one can be in Scopus, MySite, or ERA. So remember that. Next. Okay, so the composition of the team, 3 different cohort, 1 associate professor, 1 professor, and 1 medical doctor, since this study involves patient. Okay, you have to take next appointed leader. So in cases where the PI face health problem, for example, then the next appointed leader will come in to take over the project. Now, in this particular case, the track record for the PI, right? She has been given the task of being a project leader under the initial funding mechanism for young lecturers at UKM, right? I'm showing you this example to show that if you don't put anything, then you are being handicapped, right? You need to be putting in something just to indicate that you have gone through the training of managing a research grant, and you know how to manage a research grant, and the project is still in progress. When we look at the publication, right, she has published in a Q1 before. So this shows she has the ability to complete, to deliver one WOS paper, right? Plus one is being placed as Q1, in between Q1, Q2, under the Web of Science. So these are important information that we can derive from the proposal. Next. Okay, so executive summary should contain problem statement, objective, research methodology, outcome. This is cut and paste once she has done this particular section. So this should be the last part that you should be focusing. Focus on problem statement. One problem statement has been done, then she can just cut and paste, put it here. Now, the other thing that I need to highlight to you is hypothesis. A very simple way of explaining the hypothesis. Now, for last year, my experience with the evaluation process, there are proposals coming in without the hypothesis. So in this particular case, when we don't see any hypothesis, we say this is the technical knockout proposal, because you can never start a research without a hypothesis being put up, right? So if you leave this empty, rest assured the proposal will be knocked out very early in the evaluation stage. Next one, in terms of research question, a simple listing of the 4 research questions. Don't make it too textual. When we can see this, it simplifies the whole process. Literature review, we look for latest 5 years publication, 2018, 2019, being part of the literature review. Next. Relevance, in this particular case, she relates to SDG. You can put up as SPV, or you can just put it as part of the SDIN, or you can put it up as 1010 My STE framework. References, new issue, right? Next. This is how she, okay, patah balik. This is how she has outlined the objective, right? A listing of only up to a maximum of 4. And when this is being listed, there is a need to tell us how do you achieve investigation of different types and factors of the research objective under the methodology, right? So what we see normally is there's mismatch between methodology to the objective of the research. That create problem for the evaluator to evaluate the proposal. Next. Okay, Gantt chart being properly outlined in the proposal. Next. Okay, now in this particular case, when we look at expected result, I'm attracted to the promise of, if we were to see here, in terms of publication, that she has promised to us 3 publications, which is over and above the minimum 2. And when we look at the listing of the journal that she would be publishing, we noticed that she will be promising 3 Q1, which I would then look at the budget, and the budget requested was in the range of 74,000 ringgit for 2 years. So if I were to do a simple calculation, 3 Q1 at a cost of 74,000, to me, I would put that this proposal would be value for money, right? Coming in from social science, right? And she mentioned that 3 Q1 from social science. So that is actually a plus point for the proposal. 1 master student. Next one. Okay. Budget. This would be the minimum for a social science study, right? As compared to pure and applied science, there will be more items under Word 27,000. In this particular case, for a social science, there is no requirement for chemical, and therefore she has left out her request for research material. You can ask for all this time around. When you talk about attending local conference, this would be items that you can ask for. You can also ask for international conference, and you can also ask for traveling. Now, when you talk about traveling to attend national conference or international conference, you can put up additional figure to pay for registration fee, which comes under Word 29,000. Right? And since she has promised quality publication, 3Q1, she has requested editorial assistant for the 3 papers, as well as publication fees for the 3Q1 paper, which is very reasonable. You need to have around 5,000 for you to publish in Q1 paper. Next. Okay. She has also requested Word 29,000 for honorarium, local conference fees. Nothing for equipment. Right? If you need to put up computer, for example, do not put it under Word 35,000, but you can place it under rental, right? To pay for the rental of laptop, for example. So the total requested 73,000 for a 3 Q1 paper, which is, I think, to me, in my opinion, value for money. Next. Okay, so she didn't fill up patent search, no industrial collaboration. So the only part is risk assessment. So out of this, we didn't give the bonus point. Okay, now, so that will be for successful proposal. Any question before we move up? It's already 12. All right, can we
Hi,
just
Prof.
talk for...
Hi,
Okay,
Datuk.
go ahead.
I have one question, yeah.
Right.
All right. So basically, if for the PRGS applications, we already filed PRGS applications. The current prototype has already been patented. Is that considered we fulfill the patent obligations?
Okay, now, normally, once the PRGS project has been approved, that will be the starting point for us to take into consideration the patent or the IP that you have to generate. So anything that comes before will not be counted. That will be how we do the monitoring of the proposal. Anyhow, there are, since you have got patent file, right?
Yes.
There is also the next stage where patent granted.
All right, Prof.
Okay,
So
if
basically, we want. Sorry to interrupt. So we would like to take this prototype into clinical trials.
okay.
All
So
right. So
the idea now is you want to apply under PRGS 1.0.
yes.
I think there are two ways of you applying for suitable funding under this particular case lah. Now, if you talk about bigger clinical trial,
All
you
right.
should be looking at PRGS 2.0 because the funding would be up to a maximum of 1 million, and you can do a bigger scale clinical trial. Now, if you are thinking of doing clinical trial on normal subject, say for example, I'm giving you a general example. So if you're doing on healthy subject as part of your clinical trial, then I think you can ask for PRGS 1.0, which will allow funding up to RM 500,000.
All right, Prof.
Okay.
Okay,
Now
Prof.
you have to remember, since you mentioned about patent, right? As part of your earlier success story, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now, the other way to show that you can generate IP derived from that is you can ask for product registration, because for drugs, for example,
All
right?
right.
Once you have a registered product with the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Authority, NPRA, based in PJ, that can be
All right.
considered as an output for the current PRGS project, since you have the patent filed before that.
Thank you, Prof. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Prof.
Okay. Now, ada lagi any question before we move to case study? And in this particular case study, I'm going to pick up UPSI proposal. The idea is for me to share it here is things that can be improved should the proposal be resubmitted again under the current cycle. Right? It is not to undermine the proposal.
Okay, Datuk, ni
Okay.
ada beberapa soalan lagi daripada chat section. Okay. How the panel moderate the final marks? Because sometimes they found that assessment from panel to panel is inconsistent. Is there any moderation?
Ini you're talking about internal ataupun KPT level?
I think for KPT this one, Datuk.
Okay, kalau at KPT, the assignment to the expert would be done by the head of domain. Right? Ketua domain will be assigning the proposal to researcher lah. Now we normally take in 2 evaluator, right? And if the decision is tie, a tie lah, meaning one approve, the other one tak approve. So we will ask the third evaluator to come in, and the third evaluation would determine whether the proposal is accepted or rejected, right? So there will always be the first layer where 2 evaluators will look at the proposal, and once the evaluation is complete, then if it is a tie, then the third evaluator will come in to just decide on the overall status of the proposal. Itu yang saya boleh maklumkan. Okay, now boleh.
Ada lagi ni, Datuk. Ada lagi. Okay, surely for life science research, the cost will be higher given the reagents needed.
Right.
So would the threshold of what the panel consider as value for money different than that of social science proposal?
Okay, now kalau if we talk about value for money under pure and applied science, if you can show in your proposal the quotation of the chemical that you need to get for your proposal, we will follow by your suggestion, right? When you do a proper quotation on the chemical that will be needed for your proposal, we will accept the total amount that you have put up on the vote 27,000 as yours. We will not be cutting down the budget that you request for vote 27,000. The only way for us to cut, right, would be if you have the option of going for national or international, we will only allow for an international conference as part of your budget, right? You wouldn't be getting opportunity for you to attend both national or local. Okay.
Okay. Okay, GRA bolehkah dilantik dari kalangan postgraduate bukan warga negara?
Okay. Now coming back to this question. Now, if the PI happens to be an expatriate, right? The decision by Ministry of Higher Education in terms of the GRA is you have to take in a local GRA. You are not allowed to bring in a foreign GRA. Now, in cases where you request for a 3 years project, and the output that you have identified for talent would be 2 master students, right? Now, when you want to put up for your budget, or the output, or you want to bring in the GRA, out of the 2 for a 3 years project, one of them can be a foreign GRA, right? But that depends on whether 50% limit for the university has been exceeded or not, right? So if you want to get a foreign GRA in cases where you want to bring in 2 master students, before you decide to bring in 1 foreign GRA, please refer to RMIC or UPSI to determine whether the foreign GRA for UPSI has exceeded 50% of the total GRA, right? Because that is the condition being set up for this year, right? Now, untuk local PI, you are allowed to take up foreign GRA. Tapi we encourage you to go for local GRA, right? The special condition applies only to expatriates, right? In terms of the GRA that you need to be trained, you need to be putting them under training. Okay, Dr. Nojan.
Okay, clear Datuk. Ada lagi ni. Is the equipment allowed for budget proposal?
You can ask for equipment, but you have to really justify strongly in order for you to get that equipment. And you have to remember the ceiling that has been put up by KPT is 250,000, right, for this year cycle. So 40% out of 250,000, that would be about that would be about 80K, 80 to 100K. So you are allowed to buy equipment under vote 35,000, but the ceiling for vote 35 should be 40% of the total budget. Clear?
Okay. Okay, Datuk, lagi satu. A computer or laptop is allowed to be budgeted in, but through rental arrangement.
That
Which
one is
means that
something.
we need to source out for rental of computer laptop.
Yeah. That would be another arrangement. Should you need laptop or computer expert? If you request laptop under vote 35,000, it's a big no. You're not allowed to ask for computer under vote 35,000. But if you want to rent it out, I think shouldn't be a problem. It's the arrangement that you have to do with RMIC in terms of rental for laptop.
Okay. Alright. Okay.
Apa lagi? Harap boleh Prof berikan
Okay, ni
pencerahan.
ada lagi satu ni. If the proposal is approved and activated, will KPT considered for readjustment of budget due to pandemic?
Oh, yang tu dah ada kan? Yang tu does not cover for this year. Memang dah kementerian dah bagi 9 bulan extension. Betul tak? Puan
Itu extension masa ni budget. Readjustment of budget. Due to certain activity. Rasa tak ada isu ni. Buat
tak ada,
moment
tak
je
ada.
lah. Waiman saja.
Itu tak ada masalah lah. Itu
Buat pindaan
lokal.
ya.
Itu lokal
Daripada
kan.
mana ni? Okay. Minta
Itu
rujuk
lokal.
RMIC masing-masing lah.
Ini local, not to the extent of KPT. KPT has decided 9 month extension. Itu dah memang ni lah. But you don't ask for additional budget lah.
Okey, yang ini boleh tak Prof terangkan tentang pembayaran yang tidak dibenarkan, iaitu pembayaran sewaan ruang fasiliti di institusi masing-masing.
Okay, now if you talk about sewa ruang ni, kalau if you do animal experiment, say for example, and you requested the budget for it, and once you do the animal experiment, the animal has to be placed in an animal care facility, right? Because of the ethics being set up. So if you need to pay for this facility, you are allowed to do so, right? Itu memang dibenarkan. When you do experiment on animal, the animal has to be kept under a temporary place. Memang you boleh ask for budget to pay for those services. Sama juga kalau if you need advanced instrumentation and the university charge certain fee for you to use that particular advanced instrumentation, you are allowed to pay for that services. Now, ministry tak allow kalau sekiranya you want to rent a place for you to do the experiment, because the assumption is all lecturers will be given the basic facility. There will be a lab already available to the lecturer for them to carry out their research. So kalau if you want to rent another space and you ask for rental for that new space, memang itu tak dibenarkan langsung. Itu yang setakat tu yang saya boleh jelaskan. Tapi urus ni can be so many things. The principle yang saya boleh bagi kepada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Okey, Dr. Nojan.
Kalau ikutkan ada beberapa lagi ni, banyak lagi lah. Okey, macam mana? Boleh.
Yang ni kita pergi yang satu lagi. So that I will just explain with the hope that I can share dengan penyelidik UPSI lah. Dia bertuah kerana saya bincang projek dia secara terbuka. Boleh? Yang tak disokong
Okay, boleh Datuk. Boleh.
Ini kita sambung balik question
Okey, boleh.
Okey, permohonan ni datang daripada UPSI. Okey. Tajuknya Identification of Potential Drug Target from Cannabis Sativa Compound on Cardiovascular Effect using in silico approaches. Now, kalau sekiranya dilihat dari segi ini, the scientific name is Cannabis Sativa. Nama lain is ganja lah. Now, let me tell you, ganja is being given attention nowadays lah. Kalau if you look at Thailand, if you look at European countries, ganja is actually being promoted just because it can create wealth to any country that promotes ganja. But the kind of ganja or cannabis sativa is not the addictive form, right? The addiction from ganja comes from a compound in ganja, and this compound is identified as tetrahydroxycannabinol acid, THC in short. Now, the one being promoted in Thailand, in Europe, in the US, is ganja coming from not THC tapi CBD, cannabidiol, which is actually an oil. So bagi saya, bila saya baca projek ni, Identification of Potential Drug Target from Ganja, looking at the effect on heart using in silico approach, ada beberapa isu yang saya nak highlight lah. And tujuan saya buat ni ialah dengan harapan bila penyelidik berkenaan, kalau sekiranya dia nak perbaik proposal ini, tolong perbaiki daripada segi isu-isu yang kita nak isu semasa yang diberi perhatian oleh kerajaan. Okay, you have to remember ganja is being promoted, and that's why I think kalau tengok the next thing, now the other keyword is in silico protein ligand cardiovascular cannabis sativa. Now for in silico work, in silico work, which is actually drug modeling using computer, that is actually the tool being used nowadays in drug discovery. But you have to remember, bila kita buat in silico work, you have to do also drug synthesis for whatever compound that you have picked up from your in silico work, and you have to prove similar effect that you have predicted from computer at the bench. So meaning there must be two components to it. There must be in silico and there must be bench work to prove whatever compound that you have picked from the computer would be demonstrating the same effect at the bench. So dalam kes ini bila saya tengok title dia tak ada bench work. So dalam kes ni kalau nak resubmit proposal ni boleh, tapi masukkan komponen bench work yang mana melibatkan kerja sintesis dan kajian ke atas kultur sel lah. Dan satu lagi yang dari segi keyword ni, bila saya perhatikan di bawah pattern search, dia punya keyword ni tak match dengan pattern search. So dari segi itu, komen yang saya letak ialah this keyword did not match with the keyword being used under pattern search. Right? So kalau boleh dalam resubmission, do the same thing. Right? Ingat, tujuan kita ialah bila kita tengok permohonan ni, saya tak katakan dia ditolak. Improve on this version, put in more component to it, and then you resubmit lah. Kerana dalam kes ni, I'm giving you personal coaching tentang apa yang penting, apa yang tak penting. Next slide. Okay. Now dalam kes ni, saya tengok dia ada 3 cohort, associate professor, senior lecturer, professor, which is fine. Cuma professor ni dia dapat maximum point because researchernya datang daripada OC. The associate professor ni datang daripada KETSA, Kementerian Tanah dan Sumber Asli, which is acceptable. Tapi mulai tahun ni, you kena ingat, permohonan dibuka kepada universiti awam, universiti swasta. Tidak dibuka kepada Public Research Institution, PRI, dan juga IPGM. So, mulai tahun ini, kalau sekiranya nak resubmit, penyelidik daripada kementerian ataupun Public Research Institution sepatutnya digantikan lah. Kerana syarat tahun ini hanya permohonan dibuka kepada universiti awam dengan universiti swasta. So, replacement kena bawa masuk lah kalau nak resubmit. Now, ada juga, track record, saya kata tak jadi masalah lah sebabkan kita tengok ni penyelidik baru. Now, bila kita tengok yang satu lagi, jurnal tak ada masalah, no issue to me pasal dia menghasilkan penerbitan 4 dalam 1 tahun is good for a young researcher. Next. Okay. Executive summary boleh diterima. Tapi itu saya nak kata, dia kata dia nak tengok TAC, sedangkan tujuan kerajaan menggalakkan penyelidikan dalam ganja ialah untuk melihat komponen CBD, cannabidaya. Dan memang KETSA bertanggungjawab dalam membangunkan industri ganja yang mengandungi CBD yang tinggi. So memang ini selaras dengan keperluan kerajaan. Cuma bila saya tengok dia katakan ganja terletak di bawah akta racun. Kalau sekiranya kita lihat, akta yang berkaitan ialah akta dadah berbahaya tahun 1952. Bukan akta racun lah. Pasal akta racun hanya melibatkan produk akhir. Kalau sekiranya dari segi aktiviti penanaman, pengekstrakan, semuanya terletak di bawah akta dadah berbahaya. Dan kena ingatlah, kalau sekiranya pegawai penguatkuasa menyebu makmal di UPSI dan penyelidik ni ada 20 gram ya ganja, tindakan yang dikena ialah Seksyen 39B Akta Dadah Berbahaya, yang kalau sekiranya didapati bersalah dihukum gantung. Jadi untuk mengelakkan itu, untuk mengelakkan daripada ditangkap oleh agensi penguatkuasa, sepatutnya dinyatakan dalam proposal ini permit akan diperolehi daripada Yang Berhormat Menteri Kesihatan supaya penyelidikan boleh dilakukan di UPSI, dan memang kebenaran boleh diberikan oleh Yang Berhormat Menteri Kesihatan mengikut Akta 6B2 ke atas penyelidik di Universiti Awam bagi menjalankan penyelidikan ke atas ganja. So dalam the write up tidak dinyatakan keperluan ini, kerana bila ini ditulis dalam ni, tanggungjawab RMIC UPSI lah, UPSI untuk memaklumkan kepada penyelidik, please write to Yang Berhormat Menteri Kesihatan and make sure dapat permit. Right? Nak dapat permit ni semuanya dia memang tak nyatakan dalam garis panduan ni. Untuk sebarang penyelidikan yang perlu memenuhi keperluan undang-undang, seperti contoh projek ini, yang mana akta yang berkaitan ialah Akta Dadah Berbahaya 1952, kena ada dalam keterangan proposal ini bahawa permit akan diperolehi oleh penyelidik supaya penyelidikan dapat dilakukan di UPSI dalam bidang ganja. Right? Dalam penulisan dia tak ada langsung. Right? Okay, next. Next. Jadi ini diharapkan dapat dijadikan sebagai tambah baik kalau sekiranya nak resubmit lah. Okay, bila saya tengok pattern search pula. Okay, next. 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 Okay, now bila saya tengok pattern search ni, kalau ditengok di sini tadi keyword dia patutnya ada cannabis sativa, ada juga CBD, bukan THC, dan juga hard lah. Dalam kes ni pencarian patternnya hanya satu hard. Dan kalau sekiranya saya nilai pattern search tu, saya dapati bahawa bila kita nak tengok pattern on hard ni, dia bukan khusus untuk ganja ataupun kesan CBD kat atas jantung. So dalam kes ni kita boleh katakan bahawa ada mismatch lah di antara pattern search dengan tajuk projek penyelidikan, dan itu tak memberi markah lebih lah pada projek ini. Next. Right? Jadi bila saya teliti lebih lanjut tentang pattern search, hasil pattern search, next one. Next. Okay. Ini, okay. Tak apa. Next. Next. Okay. Ini pun salah, sepatutnya Akta Dadah Berbahaya Dangerous Drug Act 1952. So ini boleh ditambah baik bukan bagi saya nyatakan kesilapan teknikal lah. Literature review semua okey. Right? Cuma kalau boleh dikaitkan dengan cannabidiol dan bukannya THC lah. Next. Okey, itu ya. So untuk penyelidik untuk penyelidik yang telah menghantar proposal ini bagi saya kalau sekiranya ada penambahbaikan dilakukan yang melihat kepada aspek yang telah saya terangkan tadi I think shouldn't be a problem of that project being approved this time around lah. Tapi itulah kena nyatakan apa yang ingin diharapkan daripada kerajaan. Kerajaan tak tengok THC anymore. It is actually ganja yang mengandungi CBD yang tinggi. Okay, so I will stop here and then I will go into question and answer now. That will complete in terms of my explanation. Let's go into question and answer until the end of our workshop.
Okey, baik Datuk, kita address soalan-soalan daripada chat section terlebih dahulu. Okey, ini ada soalan daripada Institut Penyelidikan Awam. Apakah peluang penyelidik dari Institut Penyelidikan Awam untuk mendapat FRGS? Okey. Kenapakah peluang sangat tipis? Apakah syarat yang perlu dipenuhi?
Okey, kalau tengok kita 2020 memang tawaran grant FRGS dibuka kepada Universiti Awam, Universiti Swasta, College University, Universiti Cawangan, IPGM, Institut Institut Perguruan Malaysia, Politeknik pun boleh memohon, dan PRN lah, Public Research Institution. Now, satu perkara yang diubah suai oleh KPT pada tahun ini ialah hanya membuka tawaran grant FRGS untuk universiti awam, universiti swasta, kolej universiti dan universiti cawangan sahaja. Right? Itu saja yang saya boleh nyatakan. Alasannya dia harap dapat bertemu dengan Dr. Syamimi lah, daripada segi kenapa PRI, Public Research Institution, tak boleh memohon pada tahun ini.
Okey Datuk, ada lagi soalan ni, saya ingat dia pun daripada luar, daripada UPSI. Okey. Tahun lepas kami ada memohon tetapi dimaklumkan oleh RMIC yang permohonan tidak berjaya disebabkan penilai dalaman tidak layak, at least associate professor. Untuk makluman, penyelidik grade 54 dimaklumkan adalah equivalent to Professor Madya in universities.
Okey.
Ini daripada mana?
Ini mungkin okey ya. Okey. Now, dalam proses penilaian dalaman, bagi saya yang ini sepatutnya RMIC, UPSI memang mahir lah. Right? Syarat yang ditetapkan oleh kementerian daripada segi pelantikan penilai dalaman untuk menilai ialah sekurang-kurangnya associate professor. Right? Professor. Ada setengah universiti dia melantik penilai luar, walaupun ini tak ditekankan oleh kementerian lah. So dalam kes pelantikan penilai dalaman, apa yang didapati pada tahun lepas, ada pensyarah daripada bidang perubatan, right, yang dilantik atas grade 56, tak silap saya, tapi dia baru sangat. Dia lantikan tu sebabkan dia diambil daripada hospital dan dia menjadi pensyarah. So dalam kes ni bila kita perhatikan, yang kita nak dalam proses penilaian ialah seorang pensyarah bergrade Profesor Madya yang telah pun melalui proses permohonan FRGS, right, and faham apa keperluannya lah. Jadi dalam kes bila dinyatakan grade 54 yang ni, lantikan dia bukan atas grade 54 kot. Saya agak kalau lantikan 54 ni lantikan kenaikan pangkat biasa. Yang kita ragui ni ialah grade 56. Ataupun kalau tengok tu dia lantikan terus daripada luar ni. Hak ni yang menjadi isu. So saya tak mau panjangkan isu tersebut lah di sini ya. Memang dalam kes ni, dalam penilaian tahun lepas kita dapati semasa peringkat penaziran, penilai dalaman tak memenuhi kriteria yang ditetapkan oleh KPT. Right? Dan perlu ingatlah, dan perlu diambil perhatian oleh RMIC kalau sekiranya kita lantik pensyarah kanan, grade 52, apa yang akan berlaku kalau sekiranya proses penaziran mendapati bahawa penilai dalaman ni tak memenuhi kriteria, kesemua permohonan daripada UPSI akan ditolak. Itu yang kita tak mahu bila hak ni kita jumpa semasa peringkat penaziran. So saya tak mau panjangkan lah dalam kes ni. Yang penting untuk kita faham, semasa penilai dalaman, kita berkendakkan penilai dalaman berjawatan Profesor Madya, grade 54 ke atas, yang mempunyai pengalaman. Ada setengah Profesor Madya yang lantikan terus. Dan kriteria pengalaman tu tak ada lah. Okey, yang tu ya, setakat tu ya saya nak jawab. Saya tak mau panjangkan isu yang berkaitan tahun 2020 ni. Yang mana ada 3 universiti awam ditolak kesemua permohonan.
Okey Datuk, soalan seterusnya daripada international lecturer from UPSI, Dr. Aus. International staffs allowed to apply for FRGS this year?
Okay, now I forgot to mention that the other criteria for applicant under FRGS this time around, besides lecturer, because the guideline says that if someone is being appointed as a lecturer in a university, you are eligible to apply. Now, the new addition to the eligibility of application would be if you are being appointed as research fellow in a research institution in a university. So, if the appointment is being made on a research fellow, that allows the potential research fellow to apply research funding under FRGS. Now, as far as the condition being put out for expatriate, just like what Dr. Nojan has mentioned just now, if you are being appointed as an expatriate staff on a contract basis, if you have a minimum of 1 year from the date of 31st March, the contract that remains on your employment is 1 year from 31st of March, you are eligible to apply FRGS funding, right? And you have to also remember, if you are an expatriate staff, the GRA that you have to bring in should be a local GRA, not a foreign GRA. Okay. That would be my answer to your question.
Okey Datuk, clear itu. Okey, ada lagi Datuk soalan ni? Okey, kejap ya, saya bacakan. Okey, daripada Dr. Samsul Arya. Okey, can we have 2 GRAs from local and divide the allocation budget? Let's say for FRGS allocation is RM 108,000 per month only for each GRA, so it will become RM 9,000. Both will be sponsored by university as postgraduate master student. Is this feasible?
Okay. Now, I think this would be local issue, not ministry punya issue lah. Now, first thing is you have to remember the ceiling is for a master's GRA would be 2,000, right? And for a 2 years project, you are only allowed to bring in 1 GRA. So the budget that you have to request would be for a 2 years project, and for 1 master's GRA would be 2,000 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 2, right? To give you the total budget. Now, in case should the project be approved and you want to bring in 2 masters at a lower pay, right? Now, that can be done on condition that you get approval from RMIC UPSI, right? What ministry has approved is you get a ceiling of 2,000 per month for a master's GRA. So whatever you do, how you do it, it would then be up to RMIC UPSI to determine how whether it can be done or it cannot be done, right? But you have to remember, once you are being given under word 11,000, you cannot wire out. Should you have baki or remainder during the project implementation, you cannot wire out to word 20 series. Word 11,000 stay as it is. You cannot wire out to other word for you to expand, for you to spend. Should you have saving out of word 11,000, right? Selalunya usually penyelidik dia bagi gaji rendah untuk nak menjimatkan supaya penjimatan ini dapat di wire out masuk bawah word 20,000, siri 20,000 lah. Yang ini tak dibenarkan langsung, right? Satu-satunya yang tak boleh dipindah keluar adalah word 11,000. Boleh
Okey Datuk, okey, bolehkah co-researcher daripada overseas, adakah universiti ataupun industri?
Okey, dia tadi saya terangkan, kalau sekiranya you ada penyelidik daripada luar negara, you nak bawa masuk sebagai tim penyelidik boleh, tapi yang untuk nak memasukkan maklumat tentang penyelidik tu you kena minta kebenaran RMIC UPSI lah, untuk nak membawa masuk penyelidik luar sebahagian daripada pasukan penyelidik. Satu lagi cara is kalau sekiranya you ada penyelidik luar negara, dia boleh diberikan markah maksimum lah bahawa pasukan penyelidikan. Satu lagi cara ialah dapatkan LOI daripada penyelidik tersebut dan masukkan bahawa additional info lah untuk LOI dengan industri ataupun international organisation. Okay? Bila you lengkap itu, you dapatlah bonus 5 poin. So, the strategy is, right, cara macam mana you nak buat bergantung pada strategi you. You nak collect maximum point bawah pasukan penyelidikan yang memberikan markah maksimum 5% ataupun you masukkan bawah additional info, you dapatlah bonus point 5. Dua-dua sama. 5 markah maksimum. Boleh?
Okay, Datuk. Next question. Okay, for ICT cluster, can we request to buy computer or laptop if it is necessary for the project?
Yes, yang tu memang boleh. Yang tu di domain head for ICT allows for that. Prof Kuruhana, who is the domain head for ICT, memang allow for purchase of computer lah under Word 35 tahun. Tapi selalunya ini bukan untuk normal office work. It should be for ni lah, for project purposes lah. Churning out a lot of data, you need very high processing capability lah untuk permohonan di bawah domain ICT.
Okay, Datuk. Yang ni, can I ask if epidemiology research can be considered as FRGS research?
Okey, ini selalunya bawa SKK lah, sains kesihatan dan klinikal. Kalau tengok subdomainnya memang ada epidemiologi, kot saya agak tak silap saya, subdomain tu. So tengok, saya tak berapa pasti subdomain bawa SKK tu. Kalau ada epidemiologi bawa SKK tu memang penting lah. Saya agak kalau tengok Geran COVID yang ditawarkan oleh KPT tahun lepas, banyak kajian epidemiologi. Dan kajian fundamental tu model SIR tu yang diguna pakai sekarang ni untuk menentukan infectivity semua tu. These are all fundamental issue untuk kajian fundamental, right? The modeling of infectivity rate dalam community. Sekarang ni kita tengok kalau infectivity 1.3 ke atas, kita dah panik. So I think there is a need for further research on the fundamental aspect of epidemiology. Kajian pandemic COVID-19 ni menunjukkan kata epidemiology is important, right? The way you do tracking, tracing, right? The need for an expert tool for you to do tracing, tracking semua ni is important for you to control the pandemic. So bagi saya, we are now convinced kata memang epidemiology is important in terms of pandemic control. So tak ada masalah daripada segi epidemiology, bukan merupakan bidang fundamental di bawah SKK lah.
Okay, next question is, can we purchase software to analyze the data?
Itu you can get it under Word 29,000. Itu semua ni Dr. Nojam boleh tolong saya.
Yalah, itu tak apa. So
itu
this
local
one, I
issue.
think this one.
Local
Local, yes,
issue.
okay.
Local issue kan?
It's a technical je, so no problem. I think this one is not from our university. Okay, Salam Prof, my research will involve creating a module for a deradicalization project, and this module will then be tested on participants to examine its effectiveness. Is such research allowed under FRGS?
Dia macam ni lah. If the tool is novel, if it is something new, and if it is needed to be carried out on human, on a new hypothesis or new modeling, it is considered as fundamental, right? Itu ya kata, as long as you can establish the fundamental aspect of it, that would be important. How you convince the evaluator that the proposal is fundamental, ini okay lah. You decide yourself. Selalunya di peringkat dalaman, usually within the internal evaluation, you have to remember this would be an exercise to improve further the proposal. So tap onto the internal evaluation process for you to improve further the proposal. The internal evaluation is not supposed to be rejecting your proposal, right? The internal process is supposed to be improving your proposal to fit the fundamental the fundamental request at KPT. Right? Don't worry whether it is fundamental or not. Right? There are additional mechanisms being put in place. Like, for example, the internal evaluation, which is supposed to assist researcher. So tap onto the supporting mechanism for you to make sure that your earlier version of your FRGS gets improved along the way, so that by the time it is ready for submission to KPT, it will fulfill the requirement of a fundamental study.
Alright, Prof. Okay, Prof.
Okay.
Boleh lagi ke, Prof, soalan? Saya rasa pun,
Boleh.
tapi yang this one is,
Boleh.
how
Boleh.
about for those working as theoretical physics or computational chemistry fields where they need a HPC, high performance computing, to do their calculation? If the university don't have HPC facility, can they buy workstations or GPU machines to do their research?
The idea now is don't put it under ICT, put it under SDG. Because memanglah if you talk about theoretical physicists, the most relevant domain would be pure and applied science. Say if you want to get the computing facility from ICT, I think they are not the expert in your field. So basically, what you need to do is put it up under pure and applied science. And mind you, the other head for STG, especially to look at physics proposal, is Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Mohamed from UKM, right? So, if you think you need high performance computing, talk to him, give him a call, right? And seek his opinion, because I'm sure if you were to highlight your request to him before, it will be an easier evaluation for us at the level of KPT, because Datuk Mohamed Yahya would then be notifying us that this particular instrumentation is not available in the country, and we will just conform to the request being put up by Datuk Mohamed Yahya, who is actually the head for all physics proposal in the country. Okay, Dr. Nojan, soalan lain.
Okay, yang soalan ni saya ingat pun,
Ini tak ada time limit ni. Go on lah, saya dah habis dah. Saya
Okay.
cuma nak
Okay, there is one question regarding change of the milestone due to current stage of pandemic. Saya ingat yang ni minta
ni tak boleh urus ni.
tak boleh
RMIC.
urus. Dah dimaklumkan dah. Ini daripada universiti lain ni saya ingat. Okay, sebenarnya rujuk RMIC masing-masing lah. KPT memang bagi additional 6 months. Hari tu 3 months, this one additional 6 months. Okay, so rujuk RMIC masing-masing. So what medium did the panel use for pattern search? Kalau kita minta lens.org lah yang telah ditetapkan ya.
Yeah. And you have to have an account lah. You have to open up an account with lens.org lah.
Okay, so dia kata kat sini ada satu soalan. Okay, this is the comment given to a rejected FRGS proposal of mine. The proposal is weak. It meets the assessment criteria but has major weakness or limitation. Therefore, this research grant proposal is not recommended for funding. My question is, under what condition a proposal which meets the assessment criteria but can still be considered as a weak?
Okay, now, you have to remember the evaluator being appointed by KPT are all lecturers, right? Like in my case, I've shared with you the assessment that I've done for one of the proposal coming in from UPSI. I hope by sharing the points that I have highlighted, we can improve we can improve the proposal further should the researcher wants to resubmit, right? Now, in your particular case, my suggestion to you is, right, we are all colleagues. You have to remember, when it comes to evaluation, we are being given specific criteria for us to evaluate. Now, if you happens to get tak successful, you're not successful in your application, I think the best thing is actually for you to contact the domain head, right? The listing for domain head is an open information, right? I disclose to you that I'm the information head, I'm the domain head for SDG. And likewise, when I evaluate, I'm being transparent. Right? Whatever that I put as part of my comment, should the relevant researcher from UPSI wanting more information, she can contact me. And I can assist further to make sure that if she wants to resubmit, she can do so based on the comments that I've given to her. So I think the process also applies to other domain, right? My suggestion to you is you have to contact the domain head for that particular proposal that you have and ask for further guidance. I think the one that we don't want is you create a hassle for the domain head to give you the reason why the proposal was not approved. We don't want to go into that situation, right? If you demand to know the reason for not approval, I think the situation would be very tense. Our way of improving things is, okay, we look at your proposal, okay, we discuss the point that you need to be improving, you do the amendment, and you do the resubmission, right? That's how academic behave. We are very open, right? And the evaluator are from the academic field. They are ever willing to share what they know so that you can further improve your proposal and resubmit in the coming cycle. I think that should be the healthy trend that we should be doing in this exercise, right? Don't give up hope, right? There are other ways for you to improve your proposal. Use it, okay? In this particular case, I've told you, I've shared with you online what I know about the topic of cannabis, right? What is needed by the government nowadays, and how do I assist the proposal coming from UPSI to fit the government requirement based on what I know of what is needed to be implemented in the country, right? So that's how you progress science and technology for the country. We interact. It is not one way. It is not from the evaluator to you, but there's supposed to be two way, right? We communicate further, we improve your proposal, and you resubmit with the chance of given all the improvement that needs to be done, you'll be supported in the coming cycle. That is the spirit that we wanted to maintain under FRGS as well as PRGS. Boleh, that would be my comment here to it.
Thank you, Datuk. Clearly agree, Datuk.
Okay, so we are all academic.
Okay, the next question would be on PRGS, Datuk. If the pattern is shared between universities in earlier funding, then we should continue proposing PRGS with the same university partners or not necessary because the research partner has retired. In this case, can we change university partner?
I think you have to remember the pattern is granted to the researcher with the university as part of the ownership program. Now, once the researcher has retired, the university will nominate. I think the university has no right to nominate. Selalunya, if there are commercialization out of it, the patent owner will get the benefit from the university. So, if you need to discuss further, get into contact with RMIC on the next best thing to do in terms of the earlier project that has been funded under PRGS. You should communicate to the RMIC of the respective university in terms of continuing the proposal. Itu ya. That's how I answer that question.
Okey Datuk. Okey, bolehkah project members dari industri? Saya rasa ini pun tak ada masalah. Okey, as long as dah fulfill satu yang next appointed leader tu. Okey?
Okey, tapi researcher daripada industri ni kena ada secondary qualification lah.
Ya.
Pasal the
Kena
minimum
isi
requirement
ya.
kena ada secondary, not basic degree punya qualification lah.
Alright. Okey, salam Prof. Kalau collaborator dari universiti luar negara boleh diterima?
Itu memang dah jawab dah tadi kan?
Dah jawab. Okey. Adakah markah berbeza jika penyelidik memiliki LOI, MOU dan MOA dengan industri bagi FRGS?
Okey, untuk FRGS kalau optional, you ada 3 elemen tu, you dapat bonus point. Okey. Now, kalau tengok untuk PRGS pula, right? PRGS dia hanya menetapkan LOI. Kalau you ada over and above, masa you kena tengok masa PRGS tu ada interaksi di antara penilai dengan pemohon. And masa interaksi di antara penilai dengan pemohon, you bawa rakan industri itu semua menguatkan permohonan PRGS. FRGS ni dia tak ada peluang untuk penilai dengan pemohon berinteraksi. The number of proposal coming in is too big that it does not allow for the evaluator to interact with the applicant. Itu beza dia. So that's why LOI ni becomes optional, tapi untuk PRGS it becomes compulsory, because by having this face-to-face interaction, we know how far the company or the industry collaborator would be willing to be part of the proposal. Itu ya. So dalam kes PRGS tu, masa interaksi tu dengan penilai tu, you bawa lah semua rakan-rakan you and you convince the penilai. Sebabkan ada pertemuan semuka. There is face to face. And you use that opportunity to convince the evaluator for the project to be funded.
Okay, Datuk. Next question. If we resubmit the FRGS from our previous year's application, in example, by improving from the previous application based on the critical comments for this year's new application, is it okay? Will the KPT check the similarity percentage based on our previous year's application?
Okay, like I told you, if you resubmit a new proposal based on earlier version, my grant system has one menu which is known as similarity check. Okay, this is part of my grant, and I'm sure part of internal evaluation process. This menu is open for internal evaluator to see how much changes has been done on the recently submitted proposal as compared to the previously submitted proposal. Now, normally, we when we look at similarity check dia punya tu dia nanti blip dalam sistem tu. Dia nanti the similarity check, if we don't go into that menu pun dia nanti bagi that warning. Similarity check 100% or similarity check 30%. So once we see that warning, we would then key in onto similarity check and we look at the difference between the recent proposal and the previous submission. So if you resubmit with 100% similarity check, itu tunjuk no improvement has been done. Right? So if the previous one has been rejected and the similarity index indicate 100% similar, so rest assured the recent proposal will also be rejected because you have not done any improvement. Right? Now, question is, how much improvement do we need to do? Right? Now, I will not be giving you any benchmark because there is no benchmark being put in at KPT or being discussed at KPT in terms of percentage changes needed before resubmission. So as a guideline, I'm telling you as a guideline, anything between 30 to 50% can be considered as a major improvement being made, and that will allow for the latest version to be evaluated under the present cycle. So, but please make sure that there are improvements being made to the proposal. Itu ya, that would be my advice to you.
Okay, next question Datuk. Bolehkah RMC minta 2 IPT panel dari luar sahaja, tidak terlibat panel dalaman disebabkan kekurangan ekspertis?
Selalunya yang kita minta, ya okay, kalau nak minta 2 panel luar tu selalunya dia imply ada cost lah. You panggil 2 orang, you kena bayar honorarium. So keputusan nak panggil panel luar tu bergantung kepada pengarah RMIC, bergantung kepada sumber kewangan yang ada lah. Tapi yang paling bagus, paling minima yang diminta oleh KPT adalah 2 penilai dalaman. Itu yang ditetapkan oleh KPT. Yang ni local issue kot, pengarah RMIC boleh bincang.
Okay. Kemudian ini talent development pun kita dah jawab tadi Datuk. Kemudian vote environment pun technical issue jugalah, lokal saja. Okey.
I think Dr. Nojan, most of the question is related to the basics punya regulation ya.
Okay.
So I think that any other researchers from others association need to refer to the RMICs or the department lah related to your research ni untuk nak refer tu.
Okey Datuk, rasanya kebanyakan daripada soalan itu pun lebih kepada technical issues yang mungkin penyelidik dimohon untuk rujuk kepada RMIC masing-masing. Okey. Okey, kita pun sudah jam 1 tengah hari. Kita dah bersiaran terlebih 1 jam Datuk.
Tak apa, tak ada masalah. Yang lebih tu kata apa, ini orang kata ilmu yang dikongsi ni dia tak boleh kita hadkan. Selagi boleh kongsi, kita kongsilah.
Okey, Alhamdulillah. Okey, nampaknya kita telah sampai kepada penghujung sesi bengkel ini. So bagi pihak RMIC, kami mengucapkan sekalung penghargaan dan terima kasih yang tidak terhingga kepada Prof Datuk Dr. Mohamed Isa Abdul Majid di atas perkongsian dalam bengkel yang bersiaran selama hampir 4 jam ini dan kepada semua peserta daripada UPSI dan semua universiti yang terlibat yang dapat hadir pada pagi ini. Diucapkan ribuan terima kasih kerana dapat meluangkan masa dan diharapkan perkongsian ini dapat membantu kita semua dalam meningkatkan bilangan geran penyidikan FRGS khususnya bagi penyelidik-penyelidik dari UPSI. Saya ingat itu sahaja. Saya sudahi dengan wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih banyak Datuk. Terima kasih PM Dr. Nojan and the teams and RMICs and also other colleagues from other UA. So thank you very much. Okay.
Alhamdulillah, terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak Datuk. Sorry.
Sama-sama kita.